Chapter 646. That's right, it's that Wu Xiaosu, the eldest daughter of the Wu family. Mother's heart was about to soften, but I saw that she was faking it, so I didn't let her come up. Otherwise, if something happened to her in our carriage, the Wu family might come after us to settle accounts. Xiao Lin proudly raised her little head. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but laugh. She turned around and poked her daughter's head. You're the only one who likes to pretend to be obedient in front of your eldest sister. You're making mother sound worthless. Xiao Lin stuck out her tongue with a playful and adorable expression. Arbor looked at her little sister's lively and cheerful appearance, and her heart was filled with emotion. A faint smile appeared on her lips as she nodded. Xiao Lin is quite quick-witted. Alright, you don't have to praise her anymore. If you keep praising your little sister, her tail will fly to the sky. Wei Ziqin shook her head with a smile. She held her daughter's hand, feeling full of happiness. The three of them entered Nanzhu Garden. The emerald green bamboo that greeted them caused Arbor's expression to become slightly dazed. At this time, the snow hadn't completely melted, and the emerald green and white blended together to form a scene. It reminded her of a benevolent old lady who always liked to wave her large cattail leaf fan and set up a small table in the bamboo forest to listen to the wind and the bamboo while admiring the snow. She couldn't go back. Jojo, what's wrong? Wei Ziqin looked at her child in confusion. Arbor blinked and gently shook her head. It's nothing, mother. I like it here a lot. It's good that you like it, it's good that you like it. Wei Ziqin nodded happily. Go in and take a look. Mother has already prepared for you to come home to live. The mattress and everything else is new. See if you need anything, then tell mother. Mother, you always give elder sister the best. Compared to this, I don't even look like your biological daughter. Xiao Lin pouted and teased. Wei Ziqin's hand paused, then she raised it to pat her younger daughter's back. What nonsense are you talking about? Your mother doesn't worry enough about you. Hee hee. Jolin covered her mouth and laughed. She flashed behind her sister and pulled Arbor's sleeve. Sister, when you weren't home, mother would hit me for no reason and always said that I was a naughty monkey. Now that you're back, you have to uphold justice for me. We sisters must be of one mind. Wei Ziqin couldn't help but sneer. Let me tell you, your sister is the most principled. Don't expect her to stand on your side if you do something wrong. Xiao Lin pursed her lips as the three of them walked into the exquisitely decorated room. Using a double-sided peony embroidered screen to separate the room, the outside was arranged into a small cubicle for drinking tea and entertaining close friends, while the inside was a spacious bedroom. Xiao Mu was satisfied with everything she needed after sweeping her eyes over it, so she didn't need to add anything else. She was originally a person who did not have high requirements. As long as it was comfortable, it was fine. As for the furnishings and whatnot, it did not matter. Now that father had been promoted to a marquis, mother had started to be particular. Otherwise, if it was in the village in the past, a big Kong bed was enough as long as it was warm enough to lie down. Sister, you're really not a particular person. Xiao Lin saw her sister's gaze, which seemed to be indifferent to worldly things, and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Go away, you have no sense of seniority. How can you casually make fun of your sister? Wei Ziqin patted her younger daughter. Arbor couldn't help but shake her head. Protecting her younger sister, she said, Mother is fine. We're in our own home, so we can be casual. That's right. Xiao Lin tilted her head and naturally shrank behind Arbor. I'll add more chapters today. Go home first. Don't hide. Throw your tickets over, ow. Chapter 647. You can't nurture her bad habit, Wei Ziqin reprimanded with a frown. What kind of person is she if she's like this outside? We're in the capital right now, and everyone in our family has to fight for your honor when they go out. Mom, I'm very well behaved and well mannered outside. Xiao Lin made a standard greeting and called out gently, Greetings to the crown princess. Wei Ziqin and Arbor both laughed. This mischievous girl. Arbor poked her little head. Come, let sister take your pulse. Xiao Lin extended her wrist, and before long, Arbor had her switch hands. After taking her pulse, he nodded and said, your body is quite good. Her mystic energy surged powerfully, and her aura was dense and prolonged. Although she was only a mere level 4 mystic cultivator, the strength of her body's recuperation and the expansion of her mystic meridians were very good. Sister will make 2 level 4 and level 5 mystic breakthrough pills for you. First, I'll help you recuperate for 2 more days. After 2 days, take them and enter seclusion to see if you can break through to level 6 mystic cultivator in one go. Xiao Lin's small mouth was wide enough to stuff a duck egg in. Sister. Sister. Xiao Lin was simply in disbelief. She was currently a level 4 mystic cultivator, but from sister's words, it seemed like advancing to level 6 mystic cultivator overnight was an extremely simple matter. It's fine. Work hard. Even if you can't advance to level 6 in one go, it doesn't matter. You should be able to steadily advance to level 5 mystic cultivator. Arbor comforted his sister before turning around to take his mother's pulse. Mom's foundation is weak. Let me help you recuperate first. Don't be in a hurry to advance, lest your mystic meridians become chaotic and cause chi deviation if you forcefully advance, Arbor said. Mom is already so old. It's already a pleasant surprise to be able to become a mystic cultivator. How can I demand anything else? Only then did Wei Ziqin return to her senses. Her eyes were actually brimming with tears as she grasped Arbor's hands. She muttered to herself with an agitated expression, Jojo, tell Mom, did you become an alchemist? What his daughter was talking about just now should be pill refinement. Arbor nodded. He was a little surprised that his mother would be so emotional. He helplessly patted her hand and said, didn't you already know that I have some medical skills? That's different. How could that be the same? You've become an alchemist. Madame Wei continued to mutter, daughter, an alchemist is very different from a normal doctor. Alchemists are quite impressive. Yes, yes, yes. Arbor could only nod along with his excited mother. Mom, don't wake me up before dinner. I'll concoct a few pills for little Lin, her and the others. Okay. Go ahead. Mother and your younger sister won't hinder you. Wei Ziqin beamed from ear to ear as she nodded. She pulled her younger daughter towards the door as she muttered, no, this is such a good thing. You must tell your father and have him open the ancestral hall. I want to pay respects to the ancestors. This is the manifestation of our ancestors. Arbor. Mom, aren't you exaggerating a little too much? Because she didn't have a handy medicinal cauldron, Arbor still took out a very ordinary cooking stove to concoct her pills. If other alchemists were to see that this strange child had used this crappy little cauldron to concoct those high-grade pills with purple veins, they would probably vomit blood and faint from anger. Arbor washed her small hands clean and calmed her mind. She took out a few stalks of herbs for concocting a level 11 mystic breakthrough pill and began to carefully grind them. Chapter 648. It was still because she didn't have a medicinal cauldron, so the little fellow could only make a porcelain jar on the small stove to make her pills. If those people from the Pill Alliance saw this scene, they would definitely slap her to the wall, making her unable to be pulled down. You freaking made a small jar for stewing tonics, and your sister stewed it there, and you actually made a purple-veined pill. Why don't you go to heaven? That was why it was more convenient for her to use a small jar to stew medicinal powders, ointments, and the like. It was also fine to make medicinal liquids, but refining pills was a little out of place. Who asked her to be so poor that she didn't even have a decent medicinal cauldron? However, her alchemy and medical skills were all made up by herself. Before eldest Qin told her about medicinal cauldrons, she didn't even think that there was such a thing as a medicinal cauldron. Perhaps that master of hers, who was rather capable in the medical field, also did it like this. Otherwise, why didn't she have any information about medicinal cauldrons in her mind? How would she know that her capable master basically didn't need to worry about refining pills in the later stages? He just needed to throw the medicinal ingredients in, and he didn't even need to control the heat, and it would form pills on its own. Unlike her, who still had to bitterly watch the heat. So it took so long, and she could only refine 2 types of pills in a little over 2 hours. It really made her depressed. With this kind of refining speed, she didn't even have the face to tell others that she was an alchemist. That patient was about to die, and she still needed to refine pills for an hour. That person would have kicked the bucket long ago. Sigh. A certain darling supported her chin with one hand as she squatted beside the small stove. From time to time, she would use mystic energy to adjust the heat and gently brush the lid of the porcelain jar. She had to think of a good idea to speed up. She still had to refine pills for Dad and the rest. This way, she wouldn't be able to finish even if the sky turned dark. When Emolien stealthily sneaked in, he saw his wife's small, bitter face as she fretted over a small pot of stew. He was simply a little stunned. His phoenix eyes suddenly widened. This is... You won't tell me. You use this small stove and small white porcelain jar to stew your purple-veined pills? What do you think? Darling Chow was already feeling a little hopeless from waiting. Therefore, after she learned how to concoct medicine, to be honest, she hadn't really concocted many pills. It was simply too slow, so slow that she wanted to sleep. You? Crown Prince Emo was simply at a loss for words as he looked at his eccentric wifey. How many times have you succeeded in refining pills? Emo Lien couldn't believe it. A certain baby rolled her eyes and gave him a look that said, nonsense. Student Emo felt that the bronze cauldron he used was already broken enough. It was simply a waste of his great talent in refining weapons. However, using such a broken cauldron, he could still make something like a level 15 spirit weapon. If this were to spread out, it would really shock the world. However, this time, he felt that those people who thought that he was enough to shock the world were definitely ignorant and inexperienced. They had not seen the weirdness of his little wife. This was the oddball girl of the entire alchemy world. Jojo, where are the pills you refined? Here. Arbor's little mouth twitched as he showed him the few jade white pills in the lid of the teacup. This time, Prince Emo couldn't help but slightly open his mouth. There were 4 small round pills in the lid of the teacup. Based on his experience, he had never seen anyone who could refine so many pills in one afternoon. You actually refined 4 pills in one afternoon? What kind of pills are these? It smelled so good. Chapter 649. Are you kidding me? If I can only refine 4 pills in an afternoon, then I don't want to live anymore. Arbor rolled his eyes and threw him a small porcelain bottle. And this? Prince Emo. My wife is especially inhuman when she's refining pills. What should I do? There were no less than 10 small, round pills in the small porcelain bottle. I'm not refining anymore after refining this, the little girl said impatiently. The little girl said impatiently, refining 20-something pills in one afternoon, it's so slow. Prince Emo, if there were other alchemists present right now, they would definitely want to beat her to death. These are all level 11 mystic breakthrough pills? Prince Emo asked as he held the small bottle. No, 10 level 11 mystic breakthrough pills and 6 stasis dispelling pills. Arbor glanced at the teacup lid and said, those 4 pills are for Shaolin, her and father. They were level 4, level 5, and level 7 and level 8 mystic breakthrough pills respectively. If there were no accidents, father could advance to level 9 mystic cultivator, and Shaolin should be able to advance to level 6. Emolien already didn't make any sound. He really wanted to ask her, using such a lousy tool, a small jar for stewing bird's nest, to refine pills, don't you feel sorry for the pills and so many excellent medicinal herbs? But the problem was, the pills actually obediently took shape. To other alchemists who earnestly bought medicinal cauldrons and refined pills day and night, this was such a heart-rending matter. Baby, do you know of pill houses? I do. Arbor cast him a sidelong glance and felt that the crown prince's gaze was a bit off. It was clearly a bit like he was looking at someone from another planet. Then do you know of any pill houses that sell ordinary medicinal cauldrons? Arbor shook his head honestly. How would she know? If it weren't for the Omega Kotoku bringing her to experience pill houses last time, she wouldn't have come into contact with them at all. Was she to blame for being ignorant in her previous life? She hadn't refined pills in her previous life, so of course she wouldn't understand this stuff. You spent the entire afternoon refining level 11 mystic breakthrough pills and blood stasis dispersing pills. You even refined mystic breakthrough pills for Xiao Lin, her and father. How did you manage to concoct them in such a short time? The Crown Prince was extremely curious. Classmate Arbor looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He raised his hand and patted the small porcelain jar. The lid opened, revealing 4 small pills that had already taken shape. You can use different herbs to put them inside and stew them together, right? Mo-lien! Exclamation point. You actually didn't explode like that, you're ruthless. But these pills are of different grades, and their attributes are different as well. Mixing them together to refine, no, to stew them. What are you doing? Xiao Mu had an expression that said, "You're so ignorant and inexperienced." That's why I said it's annoying. Furthermore, he had to constantly control the temperature of the fire, and he couldn't even take his eyes off it. How annoying. The most I've stewed is 6 mystic breakthrough pills of the same grade in one jar. Arbor placed the lid back on the jar and waved his small hand. Don't worry, I'll be done soon. Is it time to eat? It's not time to eat yet, Mo-lien replied with a wooden expression. His wife couldn't be called a weirdo when it came to refining pills. She was simply a pervert. What should he do? Previously, it took me half an hour just to grind the various herbs. Baby, don't say such things in front of other pill refiners in the future, Mo-lien looked at him seriously and said. Why? Because you'll be beaten up by a group of people. He was so worried about his wife. It wasn't over yet. Chapter 650. The other pill alchemists were truly strange creatures. She was purely discussing the grinding time of medicinal herbs, stewing, pill refinement methods with them to promote mutual communication. She couldn't even do that? Looking at the Crown Prince's deeply worried gaze, why did she feel like the other pill alchemists would beat her up? That was impossible. Everyone was fastidious, so they had to do some upper-class fastidious things. What are these last 4 pills? The Crown Prince glanced at them. Aside from the faint purple veins on them, everything else felt about the same. Even the color was pure white, and the size and roundness were all carved from the same mold. They're just 4 body-tempering pills for my second uncle. Arbor skillfully slapped the small lid and took the 4 body-tempering pills into his hand. He carefully examined and sniffed them before nodding his small head in satisfaction. Mo-lien, I refined them quite well. Do you want to take a few to eat? Qingluan said they taste very good. Mo-lien, what the hell did he mean by taste very good? Could it be that in his darling's eyes, he was such a foodie? Arbor stuffed him with a body-tempering pill and 2 level 11 mystic breakthrough pills. These body-tempering pills are good for the body, so you should eat them. You don't have much use for mystic breakthrough pills, so give them to your subordinates. Jojo. Mo-lien pulled his small hand, touched. You're so good to me. Arbor turned to glance at him and nodded seriously. It's only right that I treat you well. You're also very good to me. Mo-lien almost laughed out loud. Look, his Jojo was such an honest darling. Mo-lien reached out to cup her small chin with a grin. Just as he was about to plant a kiss on her lips, he heard hurried footsteps outside the door, and Duan Yu's killjoy voice drifted inside. Chow chow. Time to eat. Mo-lien picked up that scalding pot of stew and threw it in Duan Yu's direction. Arbor immediately jumped up and shouted, Hey, catch. Don't break my medicine jar. Duan Yu originally wanted to kick it away, but when he heard Jojo's words, he quickly hugged the medicine jar to his chest and looked over in bewilderment. What is this thing? You two brothers, don't ruin it. If you want to fight, do it outside. I only have one pot that I can use to refine pills. If I break it, I'll have to find another pot. As she spoke, our dear Xiao Mu took back her jar from Duan Yu's hands with a treasured expression and ran to wash it. Duan Yu looked in bafflement at Imo Lien, who was walking over with her hands behind her back. What kind of mystic weapon is that jar? Look at how nervous Jojo is. Imo Lien rolled his eyes at him. It's just an ordinary pot of medicinal stew that I bought from a street stall. What profound artifact? Don't be ridiculous. Duan Yu. She's using this to make pills? No way. Mo Lien pointed his chin in that direction. Duan Yu looked in the direction he was pointing and saw a small stove. Duan Yu gaped. Tools for refining pills. Arbor ran over after washing the jar. When she saw Duan Yu still standing at the door in a daze, she thought for a moment before taking out a body-tempering pill from her pocket and tossing it to him. This is for you. She gave the remaining 2 body-tempering pills to second uncle. Let's go eat. Arbor put away her set of tools for refining pills and was led out the door by Imo Lien. She even looked back curiously at the dazed Duan Yu. What's wrong with him? Nothing, he's just a bit frightened by you. Duan Yu. Arbor called out. Duan Yu hastily followed her out the door. Chapter 651. Duan Yu looked at Arbor incredulously the entire way. Jojo, I must obtain the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron for you tonight no matter what. His Jojo actually used a set of goods from a street stall to refine pills. This was too much of an insult to her skills. I've already prepared the pills that person wanted. The earlier we finish eating, the earlier we can leave and the earlier we can return. Hopefully, that person was a straightforward person. Arbor wasn't willing to waste his breath on others. Our dear Xiao Sen was brought back from the academy by a servant, but he still cowered and evaded his eldest sister when he saw her. The family ate a joyous and harmonious meal. Arbor took out the finished pills and gave them to father, second uncle, and Xiao Lin. The 3 of them were overjoyed, and they practically couldn't take their eyes off the pills in their hands. After we finish eating, we plan on going to Wuruan Pill House to see what exactly that medicinal cauldron that has been talked about looks like. Xiao Mu said, I'll be back later. Just send someone to leave the door open. Wei Ziqing nodded and instructed, don't be too late. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin and Xiao Sen gazed at their sister eagerly, looking like they wanted to go with her. However, due to their mother's fierce expression, they didn't dare to speak. Mom. Children, don't go jumping around so late at night. Your eldest sister is a pill alchemist. Wei Ziqing spat out these 2 words especially gloriously, her face practically glowing. Eldest sister is going to the pill house to handle serious business. You two should behave yourselves and stay at home. Don't disturb your sister. Xiao Lin and Xiao Sen looked at each other and drooped their small heads. Mom, it's fine. It's almost the new year, so the streets should be quite lively. Anyway, it's early after eating, so I'll bring them out for a stroll. They won't be back too late. Xiao Lin and Xiao Sen quickly raised their heads again, their round and bright eyes brimming with hope as they looked at Wei Ziqing. Wei Ziqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry at their antics, and she glanced at them irritably. Don't cause trouble for your eldest sister when you go out. I know. Mother, I'm very obedient. The 2 siblings hurriedly agreed. When they were eating, they also put in a lot of effort. Their hearts were about to fly out of their homes. After hurriedly finishing their meal, Arbor and the 2 children boarded the Crown Prince's carriage and headed towards Wurundan. Xiao Yao didn't follow them. She politely bowed to Wei Ziqing, Qiao Zhongbang, and then went back to Nanzhu Garden to pack her things. This child, Xiao Yao, is getting better and better. Wei Ziqing sighed with emotion. She turned her head and saw her nephew, Xiao Hu, staring blankly in the direction of the other party's departure. She couldn't help but burst out laughing. Silly boy, you haven't seen Xiao Yao for a long time. Why don't you talk to her more? Isn't that so? Look at how silly he is. Why aren't you going? Second Uncle Qiao reached out and slapped his son's head. Xiao Hu jumped up and left in a hurry. The carriage rolled along Minshan Avenue for a while at a moderate speed. Before they reached Wu Rundan House, they saw that the road was already congested. Moreover, the snowy road was difficult to travel on, so two carriages actually crashed into each other and were stuck in the middle of the road. The servants of the two families accused each other and argued loudly. Arbor lifted the curtain and peeked out to take a look. The road ahead is blocked. Let's get off the carriage and squeeze in. The transaction hasn't started yet. Let's go to the third floor of that restaurant. When the time comes, we can just shout. Mo Lien couldn't bear to let his little fellow squeeze in with a bunch of stinky men, so he pulled her little hand and pointed forward. Time to sleep. Chapter 652. Arbor raised her small head. This three-story restaurant wasn't large, but it happened to be right next to the pill house, so it was already packed with people. How could there still be seats like this? This restaurant is actually still operating normally. What were they scheming? Arbor was a bit curious. Those who sold sesame seed cakes would sell sesame seed cakes because they wanted to barter with others for other daily necessities. But a restaurant was different. A restaurant would definitely have a rich variety of dishes and ample wine. Of course. Mo Lien smiled at her and held her small hand as they walked towards the restaurant. There are 5 inns and restaurants in the entire capital that are operating normally. Of course, their prices are a bit higher. They don't buy gold, silver, pearls, and jade, but all kinds of forging materials, medicinal herbs, and at the very least, mid and high-grade magnetite. Mo Lien leaned close to her and whispered, "This is a profitable business with little capital. That piece of supreme-grade blood-forged gold was bought from here." Darling Qiao's eyes suddenly bulged as she looked at the crown prince like he was an unscrupulous merchant. She lowered her voice and asked, "This restaurant is yours?" Mo Lien nodded rather smugly. "How is it? Hubby runs a good business, right?" When Duan Yu heard this, he gave a disdainful harumph. "Using your power to bully others and plunder the people's wealth." Mo Lien cast him a sidelong glance and spat at him. What did a brat know? The night pavilion's intelligence-gathering work had to be carried out in restaurants and teahouses. All 5 inns and restaurants in the capital are yours. That's not it, there are only 3. As long as it's called Morning Cloud Restaurant, it's ours. Mo Lien led the little fellow inside. The innkeeper recognized the crown prince's identity at a glance, but he didn't dare to make a fuss. He only quickly welcomed them and respectfully escorted them to a private room on the 3rd floor. He arranged for a waiter to eagerly pour tea for them and then went to prepare the dishes. Mo Lien waved her hand and said, "Don't be busy. We just finished our meal and came over. Just some tea, pastries, and snacks will do." The innkeeper quickly agreed respectfully and quickly led people out to prepare. "Is business good here?" "This place is a little more remote, so the business isn't as good as the other 2 restaurants. However, due to the special circumstances of the past few days, the restaurant's business has improved a lot because of the pill house's auction. No wonder His Highness the Crown Prince is in such a hurry to cultivate a batch of edible vegetables. I reckon that if he continues to operate like this, his private stockpile of grain will be depleted." Duan Yu harumphed. The 2 children didn't interrupt, but when they saw that the tea and snacks were served, they happily ate them. Arbor tilted his head and thought for a moment. If it's just vegetables, fish, prawns, and fruits for the 3 restaurants, I can think of a way. But there are fewer meat birds. Her paradise planet's vegetables and fruits, especially the peaches, were almost unable to store them all. However, he could take out some to supply them. There were plenty of fish and prawns in the lake, so Qiu only needed to catch some casually. Even now, Paradise Planet was still not very willing to accept living creatures from the outside world. Therefore, it was very rare to put living animals from the outside world inside. Naturally, the poison-tailed butterflies that they had painstakingly reared in couldn't be treated as food. Those were her little companions. According to Chocho, she reckoned that she would only be able to take care of some small animals and bring them into Paradise Planet after her cultivation reached level 13 Mystic Cultivator or above. At that time, Chocho wouldn't drag things out so tiresomely. Arbor propped up his chin with one hand and looked back. He saw two youths looking at him, waiting for him to continue. Chapter 653. Unfortunately, she couldn't invite them into Paradise Planet to take a look, and Darling Qiao was too lazy to explain so much. So she looked at them and directly took out 2 peaches from Paradise Planet. Try it. It's a bit tastier than before. I can supply this kind of peach for a long time in the restaurant. But it can only be exchanged with medicinal herbs. Mo Lien was long accustomed to the little fellow taking out peaches from time to time. Duan Yu, on the other hand, was taken aback as he stared blankly at her. This peach, is it the peach from the paradise we went to back then? Duan Yu clicked his tongue in wonder. When he took a bite, he felt that the moisture was extremely good and the texture was excellent. It practically melted in his mouth and even converged into a warm current that merged into his mystic meridians. This was a rare and excellent product. There was a mellow mystic energy hidden inside the peach. Although there wasn't much, it was very rich. Just a few drops merged into the mystic meridians and it could cause a ripple in one's mystic energy. If he could feel it eating with his cultivation, it would definitely imperceptibly increase the concentration of mystic energy in his body if he took it for a long time. However, when he took a bite, he glanced over and saw the 2 children staring at him eagerly as if their saliva was about to fall out. What should he do when he suddenly felt like he was bullying children? Sister. The 2 children turned their heads at the same time and looked at their sister eagerly. Arbor couldn't help but find it amusing, and she reached out to take out 2 ebony blue storage talismans. Here, I won't forget your share. She had already prepared them for her 2 younger siblings. There were over 1,000 peaches inside, as well as many other fruits and snacks, enough for them to eat for a long time. Don't be greedy and eat too much until you can't eat. Arbor instructed, drip a drop of blood to open the talismans. Try it. The 2 children cheered and put down the pastries in their hands. They bounced over and took the ebony talismans from her hands before going to play around by themselves. What Arbor lacked the most right now were all kinds of talismans. After staying on Paradise Planet for more than 2 years, she would draw talismans to kill time when she had nothing to do. There were at least 1,000 assistive offensive talismans drawn from ebony. In addition, she had drawn more than 500 ebony blue storage talismans, so she didn't have to worry about her storage space at all. He didn't draw many summoning talismans, only about 40 of them. Now that he thought about the summoning talisman, he felt very depressed. Every time he summoned something, it was not very reliable. This time, he actually summoned a snake. He really did not like it. In addition, she also used ordinary blank talismans to draw many talisman formations in case of emergency. As a result, there were only 4,400 blank talismans in stock and 6,400 blank ebony in stock. Mo Lien, I want some more ebony. When Arbor thought of this, he said excitedly, I've learned a new glyph array. However, drawing this glyph array on ordinary blank glyph paper might not be as effective as drawing it on ebony. 120 pieces of ebony will be used to draw this talisman formation, so it's better to prepare more. Alright. Mo Lien naturally agreed without hesitation. Ask Bailey Shi to get more. Ebony was not a rare item in the south, so Bailey Shi only needed to give an order to get it. Duanyu asked curiously, what new glyph array did you learn? Our dear Duanyu, who knew nothing about talisman drawing, felt that talisman practitioners were very mystical. Arbor was a bit smug. Have you heard of it? Transfer glyph array. Chapter 654. After saying that, Duan Yu's mouth gaped open with a "you're so awesome" expression. The little fellow was quite pleased with herself. Right now, she was liking that golden talisman jade tome that inexplicably appeared in her conscious more and more. The talisman carving described in this golden talisman jade tome was truly too wondrous. It gave her a very novel feeling every time, intoxicating her with it. She wished for nothing more than to diligently learn more. Transportation talisman matrices are truly amazing. Mo Lien nodded and said, "I've never heard of anyone from that talisman patrician family drawing transportation talisman matrices. What about this transportation talisman matrix? How far can it transport?" Based on my current talisman energy as an intermediate level talisman practitioner, the transportation distance I can draw is estimated to be within 5 kilometers. The number of people transported cannot exceed 5. The number of people transported cannot exceed 3 times in a row. The little fellow puffed up her cheeks. The number of people really is a bit low. However, this is only my estimation. I haven't really drawn it before, so I'll only know the actual situation after I draw it. When the two youths heard this, they both wanted to roll their eyes. Not bad, baby. After 3 consecutive teleportations, the 5 of them were already 15 kilometers away. Even if someone wanted to hunt you down, they would have to use an extremely fast flying mystic weapon or a very strong flying beast. Otherwise, they could only watch you guys die. Alright, I'll urge you on the ebony matter, Mo Lien said with a grin. Then what grade of medicinal herb do you want to exchange the peaches for? Arbor was at a loss when she asked this. She knew the quality of medicinal herbs, but she wasn't clear about their grades. That longevity flower was an intermediate level medicinal herb, and it was that miss from the Pill Union who kindly told her. Can you give me a book on medicinal herb grades to look at? What Mo Lien took from the royal physician before were all unique medical manuals that didn't touch on the basic classification of medicinal herbs at all. Mo Lien and Duan Yu couldn't help twitching their mouths. Who would have thought that a fellow alchemist who could casually stew a batch of purple-veined high-grade pills with a small stew pot bought from a street stall actually wasn't clear about the basic classification of medicinal herbs? This little fellow only had experience and high-level knowledge, but her basic theories were very shallow. I don't need to read a book for this. The quality of medicinal herbs is similar to the classification of our forging materials. Generally, they were divided into low, medium, and high grades. Above that were yellow grade, black grade, earth grade, and heaven grade materials. The blood-forged gold I told you about before is a top-grade material that can be used to forge a level 15 spirit tool. That's why it's technically called an earth-grade forging material. Mo Lien explained to his little wife, generally speaking, we can call any material above the earth grade a top-grade material. Xiao Mu came to a realization. As for this peach of yours, if consumed over a long period of time, it can strengthen one's physique and also increase one's cultivation and profound energy. The profound energy contained within the peach is extremely dense and is not bad at all. I suggest that you at least exchange it with medicinal herbs of profound grade and above, so that you won't suffer a loss. Arbor nodded repeatedly. Then I'll leave it to you. Save me the trouble. Mo Lien naturally agreed with a smile. Arbor then gave her an ebony talisman that contained more than 1,000 peaches. When she turned around to look, she saw that guy, Duan Yu, looking at her eagerly. Thinking about how Duan Yu had helped her a lot, she couldn't favor one over the other, so she also tossed him an ebony blue storage talisman that contained a lot of peaches. She also gave him 2 empty storage talismans to store things. After a round of distribution, people were already shouting at the entrance of the pill house downstairs. Chapter 655. Mo Lien, I have a lot of vegetables and grain. If the restaurant doesn't have enough to sell, you can look for me, Arbor said to Mo Lien. Paradise Planet's vegetable fields had already reached a certain scale. Now that Qiuqiu was bored out of his mind, he started thinking about planting food. Presumably, it wouldn't be long before Qiuqiu built 2 more granaries to store things. Fortunately, Paradise Planet's surface area was very large. It was comparable to 5 or 6 times Shizhou City's surface area, so it could do whatever it wanted. If there was an abundance of food production then, they might not be able to satisfy other needs, but they might at least be able to supply food to the capital first. Mo Lien smiled faintly and said, "There aren't that many people in this restaurant usually. After all, the price is right there. How many people would be so extravagant as to spend so many magnetite just for a good meal? My stockpile of grain is enough for the time being. It'll be fine for at least a year or two. Did you forget that when we raided Qinghe town, I also took a lot of grain?" Arbor nodded. It was fine as long as there was no problem. Mo Lien, I have a batch of winter fruits in my stockpile. I can take them out. When the time comes, send someone to distribute them to the people in the shanty town on Shilua Street. There were many incidents of smashing and looting on Shilua Street. It was all because refugees from the outer city had gathered there. In the end, it was all because of the lack of food. Mo Lien was slightly taken aback. She shook her head and said, "There's no need for you to open up your personal stockpile. I'll take care of this kind of livelihood problem." He definitely had to leave his wife's money for his wife. How could he use her personal stash? Arbor was silent for half a second. "The stockpile is almost full. You can just take it and distribute it. It's useless even if I store so much." Her stockpile of peaches was about to burst. Who the hell would still store winter fruits? After returning from the small banquet that day, our dear Xiao Mu had the sapling plant 50 winter fruit trees. Because this winter fruit could be planted even in a world of ice and snow, there were no suitable conditions for planting it. Planting it in a paradise was simply a waste of talent. In addition, Qiuqiu had specially cultivated the little tree and used some unknown method to accelerate its growth. In less than 2 days, Qiuqiu had actually harvested several batches of the 50 winter fruit trees. The fruits piled up to the height of a small hill on the ground. It was really annoying to look at. "It's delicious. I'm not lying. Why don't you try it?" Since she took it out to give to the victims, it was naturally something good. She would not cheat those poor civilians. The two men, cough, cough, cough. Duanyu drank a mouthful of tea to calm his nerves before grabbing a winter fruit in passing. "Jojo, it's fine if you say that in front of us, but you mustn't say that to other people." "Why?" "You'll be beaten to death. Everyone else is rushing about for food, but you're worrying that the storehouse can't hold the food anymore. How can you endure this?" Arbor nodded honestly and asked casually, "Is it delicious?" He saw his sister-in-law's two little heads nodding furiously. So bad, so bad. "Sister, give me some more." This winter fruit tasted completely different from other stores' winter fruits. It was sweet and refreshing, and the flesh was so crispy that one almost had to swallow their tongue. Arbor speechlessly glanced at the two foodies. Even something as ordinary as winter fruit was delicious? Helpless, he took out a lot more and had the two gluttonous little fellows store it in their storage talismans. Duanyu lamented with a smile, "The taste is indeed not bad. Compared to ordinary winter fruits, it's sweet but not greasy, and the flesh is very crispy." Chapter 656. That's good. I'll put these winter fruits into talismans for you later. Take them to Shilua Street's Shed District and distribute them, Arbor said to Mo Lien. Mo Lien's heart naturally softened. She only felt that her wifey was incredibly considerate. Who said that his wifey was fierce? Look at how soft and gentle her heart was. Of course, this matter still needed to be discussed with the Ministry of Revenue. Merely providing financial assistance wouldn't solve the fundamental problem. The main thing was to make the young and strong work and distribute according to their work so that they would get what they worked for. Mo Lien temporarily suppressed these chaotic state affairs and pointed outside the window. That person is the owner of the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron. Xiao Mu hastily raised her small head to look down the window. They were all sitting by the window, and Shaoxin even eagerly climbed onto the soft brocade on the windowsill. He propped up his chin and looked down. There's no cauldron, sister. Since that cauldron is unusual, it should be able to change in size, Arbor casually muttered. However, Duan Yu scoffed. Don't be in such a hurry. Look, it can still change in size. It'll be out soon. Sure enough, it wasn't long before 3 to 5 burly men walked out, heaving a gigantic 3-legged copper cauldron that was more than 2 meters tall. Arbor, the cauldron's body was inscribed with a very imposing 9-star design, with a crescent moon hanging high in the middle. It looked quite authentic. But it was so big. It looked like a fake. Mo Lian's mouth also twitched. Are you sure this is the legendary 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron? It couldn't be a knockoff, right? This person went to great lengths to take it out to sell every day. With so many witnesses, could it be that he still dares to take out a fake? Duan Yu asked with wide eyes. Arbor pursed her lips. She felt that this cauldron was far from the exquisite and beautiful appearance she had in mind. This cauldron wasn't even as small and portable as her stew pot. Moreover, no one has subdued this cauldron before. If I can take it for my own use, who knows, I might be able to change its size at will. Duan Yu harumphed. Mo Lian held her teacup and nodded. That makes sense. Get out of the way, get out of the way. A series of noises came from the entrance of the pill house. 2 rows of guards escorted the 3 of them over. Arbor recognized the person walking in the middle. It was the old-fashioned girl from the alchemy guild that he had met in front of the elixir house. He looked to be in his early 20s and had a tall and slender figure. However, his face had always been taut and was rather stern and old-fashioned. The 2 people next to him seemed to be over 40 years old. They should be important figures in the alchemy guild. Master Hong, this way please. The old-fashioned girl stretched out her hand and led a middle-aged man in his 40s to the red copper cauldron. Beside the red copper cauldron stood an old man. His back was slightly hunched, and his eyes were slightly sluggish as he looked at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man, Master Hong, glanced at the old man before his gaze landed on the red copper cauldron. He carefully sized it up and even touched it a few times. He then sneered, "What kind of material is this cauldron made of? You actually dare to carelessly pass it off as some 9 stars mirroring the moon?" The old man's eyes instantly widened, and he rolled his eyes. If this cauldron isn't the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, this old man will be struck by lightning. I will die without a burial place. Master Hong's face darkened. You think I will believe you just because you say that? This old man isn't asking you to buy it. If you don't believe me, please leave. Master Hong harumphed. Chapter 657. His figure suddenly exploded, and he punched the red copper cauldron. The old man's eyelids didn't even twitch, but the cauldron didn't move at all. Master Hong, on the other hand, was knocked back several steps by the recoil. His eyes stared at the cauldron with some hesitation. Old Hong. The other middle-aged man from the Pill Guild frowned slightly and called out to him. At this moment, a plain voice suddenly floated down from the 3rd floor of the Morning Cloud restaurant. Her small hand pressed against the cauldron, and she said indifferently, "Can a level 11 mystic breakthrough pill and a stasis-dispersing pill be exchanged for this cauldron? Here. Take a look." Without saying a word, he handed a small box to the old man. The old man's eyelids rolled slightly, and his eyes lit up as he received the box with both hands. He looked up at the little girl floating over and couldn't help but be secretly shocked. What a young little girl. Could it be that she became a pill master at such a young age? The old-fashioned girl glanced at Arbor a few more times, and asked hesitantly, "It's you?" Although they had met in a hurry that night, she had always remembered the little girl who might be able to refine pills with purple veins. Although the little girl in front of her looked very different from that night, her eyes left a deep impression. Arbor nodded at the girl in a very friendly manner. Master Hong, on the other hand, shouted angrily at the top of his voice, "Miss! Aren't you being a little too unkind by interfering like this? Arbor glanced at that person and didn't say anything. He looked at the old man. How is it? The old man had already quickly checked the pills in the box. There was a level 11 mystic breaking pill and a blood stasis dispersing pill. There was not a single difference between the two pills. Both of them were high-grade purple-veined pills. The quality of their refinement was of the highest quality that had never been seen before. The old man's gaze was slightly agitated. "Aunt, may I ask who refined this high-grade pill with purple veins?" This old man looked at its appearance and heard that its color was extremely good. In this capital city, there aren't many people who can refine pills of such quality. Arbor interrupted the old man's excited words. He didn't say anything else, and only glanced at the old man indifferently. "Then it's a deal. I'll take the cauldron now." The old man naturally kept his mouth shut and nodded his head excitedly. "Wait a minute." Master Hong's face was full of anger. He stepped forward and reached out to press the medicine cauldron. Arbor's eyes turned cold. He instantly flew up and slapped away Master Hong's palm. His small hand grabbed the medicine cauldron and lifted it up abruptly. The surrounding onlookers were all dumbfounded and tongue-tied. Under a giant cauldron that was more than 2 meters tall, a slim little girl raised the cauldron with only 2 fingers and stared coldly at Master Hong of the Alchemy Guild. "I don't like other people touching my things," Arbor said coldly, but she saw Master Hong's face changed greatly and rushed towards her. "Wait! I also want to buy this cauldron." Arbor snorted coldly. His body leaped lightly and directly jumped into the air. He reached out his hand and patted the medicine cauldron neither lightly nor heavily. A wisp of profound energy was suddenly injected into it. The medicine cauldron exploded with a colorful light in the air. In just a moment, it disappeared in front of everyone. Master Hong was so angry that he almost vomited blood on the spot. "You! Time is fleeting. It's your lack of foresight that doesn't know how to grasp the present." Arbor coldly threw his words at him, making people feel stifled. She didn't even look at Master Hong and went straight back to the restaurant. "See you tomorrow." "Oh, I've adjusted the time to daytime." Chapter 658. On the other end, Duan Yu and Mo Lian had just finished half a cup of tea. When they saw the little girl bouncing back from the window, they couldn't help but chuckle. "Where's the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron? Summon it out for us to see." Arbor beckoned with her hand, and a palm-sized red copper cauldron flew out of her conscious and landed on the table in front of them. "TSK, it really is a weapon whose grade can't be determined." Mo Lian sighed softly before taking the red copper cauldron and examining it carefully. Only one of the 9 stars mirroring the moon pattern on this red copper cauldron emitted a stream of light, but it made the cauldron's body look very beautiful. Duan Yu also took it for a look, but he ultimately couldn't discern anything. He merely shook his head and said, "I also can't determine its grade." Arbor tilted her head with a bit of pride on her face. "Jojo is very decisive and has excellent judgment." When she saw that Master Hong's palm strike on the cauldron didn't even budge it in the slightest, she knew that this item must be extraordinary. Even if it can't be used to refine medicine in the future, it'll be good to take it out to block someone's attack at a critical moment. When she thought of this, the little fellow couldn't help but be exhilarated. "Duan Yu, try hitting it. Right now." Duan Yu's eyes widened. Arbor nodded repeatedly. "Try." "Let's not. If I break it, where am I supposed to compensate you with a handy cauldron? Just hit it if I tell you to." Arbor spat out mystic energy, and the cauldron grew in size. She firmly grabbed one of the cauldron's legs and lifted it into the air. The little fellow sat there motionless like a mountain and blinked at him as she shouted, "Come quickly. Then you have to be careful." Duan Yu made a hand gesture, and a defensive boundary was set up around the little fellow. Subsequently, a dense mystic energy pounced and heavily slammed into the cauldron from top to bottom. However, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron remained motionless. Arbor's small hand was slightly numb from the shock of Duan Yu's mystic energy. He quickly recalled the small cauldron into his conscious and massaged his aching wrist. When Emolienne saw this, she quickly grabbed Duan Yu's petite hand and rubbed it. She grumpily glared at Duan Yu and reprimanded, "You didn't know how to control your strength." Duan Yu was also anxious. He stood up and walked to Arbor's side. "Jojo, did I hurt you?" "No." Arbor shook his head. "It's just a little shaky." "Duan Yu, how much mystic energy did you use earlier?" "I've already used 30% of my profound strength." He was wrong, he should have only used 10%. Arbor, Get the hell out of here. The little fellow stretched out her little foot and stomped on Duan Yu's foot in a huff with a look of disdain. Scram scram. He had only used 30% of his profound energy and it was enough to make her wrist hurt. How infuriating. Is Jojo mad at me? Duan Yu actually turned to look at Emolienne, who was chuckling on the side. Emolienne glanced at him as though she didn't see him. She then carried Arbor over and continued to massage her petite wrist. She even instigated, "Don't be good friends with Duan Yu in the future. It's simply baffling, using 30% of your strength to hurt our Jojo." That was right. It was better not to have any friends. Arbor nodded. Duan Yu, Jojo. Duan Yu hastily expressed his stance and coughed lightly. "Although I'm only slightly better than you in terms of cultivation, think about it. You know how to refine pills and draw talismans, but I'm completely clueless about both. So you're still the formidable one, right?" Arbor glanced at him and pondered for a moment before nodding. She felt that Duan Yu was completely right. Chapter 659. Emolienne whispered into her ear, "Darling, you might have really picked up a treasure this time. This medicinal cauldron could even block 30% of Duan Yu's attack without any fear, and the cauldron's body didn't even flinch. I reckon it's completely fine as a defensive shield in a critical moment." See, that was what she was thinking. Arbor reached out and patted Emolienne's shoulder, giving her a "great minds think alike" expression. Her thoughts always coincided with Emolienne's, making her feel that classmate Emolienne was perhaps the person who understood her the most in the entire world. Even if this medicinal cauldron wasn't a vessel that could be used to refine medicine, it wasn't a loss for her to exchange 2 pills for a defensive shield. Seeing her adorable expression, Emolienne couldn't resist pinching her ears. Before she could say anything, she heard the door to the room being kicked open with a bang. The door panel bounced back violently, almost hitting the person who kicked the door open in the face. The old-fashioned girl followed Master Hong in awkwardly and glanced at Arbor apologetically. "Sorry for disturbing everyone." "Old Hong." Another man in his 40s from the Pill Union frowned and looked at Master Hong, whose behavior was out of line, with disapproval. They had indeed rushed here to exchange for the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron after receiving Chen Huron's news. However, it was Old Hong who didn't believe in someone else's medicinal cauldron in the first place and lost the initiative, allowing the little girl to obtain it. There was no right or wrong in this matter. Old Hong appeared too overbearing by refusing to let go of the little girl like this. The old-fashioned girl, Chen Huiran, also looked at Master Hong in displeasure. "Master Hong, quickly leave with us." Forcefully barging into someone else's room truly made her feel humiliated. No way. What use does a little girl like her have for that 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron? Didn't she take it because she found the medicinal cauldron fun? Master Hong said unreasonably, "Moreover, we were the ones who took a fancy to that cauldron first. How can we let others benefit from it? Could it be that our Pill Union is afraid of a few mere youngsters?" "You?" Chen Huron's long, shapely eyebrows furrowed as her face tightened. She suddenly flung her sleeves and retreated to the side. "Simply unreasonable. Grandmaster Hua, I won't interfere in this matter. Let him be." Bang! Master Hong took out a small box from his bosom and heavily placed it on the table. "Here are 2 level 11 mystic breaking pills and 1 blood stasis dispersing pill. Take it as a bargain for you. Hand over the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron." Inside the room, Jolin and Jolin opened their mouths slightly. They looked at the middle-aged man who had suddenly barged into the room and spoke very impolitely. Mo Lien and Duan Yu continued to drink their tea. They merely glanced indifferently at that idiot who barged in but didn't say anything. A moment later, the people who were gathered in front of the pill house and discussing heatedly turned their heads to take a look when they heard the sound. Master Hong, who had just aggressively gone upstairs to pick a fight, was kicked out of the restaurant by someone. At this time, he was lying flat on the street. A small box was thrown out of the window on the third floor and directly smashed into Master Hong's old face. It bounced a bit before falling to the ground. The box opened, and 2 to 3 pills the size of date pits rolled out from within. An icy voice drifted into the ears of everyone on the street. I would be embarrassed to even gift pills of this quality to a beggar. You should keep them for yourself to slowly eat. Chapter 660. Little Miss, you. Master Hua, who had followed Arbor's group from the 3rd floor to the 1st floor's lobby, was fuming. This was really not giving him any face at all. This girl directly threw one of their Pill Alliance's great masters out of the restaurant onto the street. She made their Pill Alliance's Master Hua fall on his back in full view of everyone, making a spectacularly humiliating fool of himself. Although Old Hong's actions were truly out of line, but that was their Pill Alliance. No one had ever disrespected their Pill Alliance like this. Arbor's group walked out of the restaurant without looking sideways and directly boarded the carriage. Mo Lien and Duan Yu glanced at the little fellow's displeased expression and silently stifled their laughter in their hearts. The two of them understood the little girl too well. The little girl was probably still quite angry right now. Someone had inexplicably forced her to buy and sell, so she would definitely be very unhappy. Was the little girl someone who lacked medicinal pills? She was too blind. Go to the Marquis's estate first. Mo Lien coughed lightly. The carriage driver immediately responded and flicked his whip, driving the carriage towards the Marquis of Jiyuan's estate. Master Hua still wanted to go up and reason with Arbor's group, but he was stopped by Chen Huiran. Huiran, why are you stopping me? I have to reason with that girl. Look at this, she's blowing up the matter. She's simply a newborn calf that isn't afraid of a tiger, completely disregarding our Pill Alliance. Master Hua was so angry that his face was flushed red. What do you want to reason with? Chen Huiran pulled a long face and bluntly said, the little girl obtained the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron with her own ability. Our Pill Alliance had to bully others and force a sale to snatch the medicinal cauldron back from the little girl's hands? Is this honorable if word of it gets out? Does it make the Pill Alliance proud? You! Master Hua was momentarily at a loss for words. He flung his sleeves and turned his head away with a huff. At this time, the 2 medicine apprentices from Wuruan Pill House had already helped the disgraced Master Hong up and walked to Chen Huiran and Duan Yu's side. Master Hong's old face flushed red. His lips trembled as he said resentfully, I will not let this matter go. Whether it was in his family or in the Alchemy Guild, Hong Cheng was a well-known figure. Who wouldn't salute him respectfully and call him Master Hong when they saw him outside? But it was such an unknown little girl who actually dared to talk nonsense to him and criticized his medicinal pills as worthless. He even said that even gifting it to a beggar was not good enough. It was simply infuriating. Chen Huiran sneered and said to Master Hua, Master Hua, I will return to the Alchemy Guild first. Hong Cheng angrily glared at Chen Huiran's back as she left. He turned to Hua Feng and said, Master Hua, look at her attitude. You're just a mere mid-level alchemist in the Pill Alliance. How dare you be so rude to me, a high-level alchemist? Hua Feng persuaded Hong Cheng and pulled him back because he felt that many people were looking at them on the street right now, which made him feel even more humiliated. However, a seed of hatred was planted in Hong Cheng's heart. He felt that the stoic-faced little girl had trampled all over his dignity today. He would definitely seek revenge for such an insult in the future. After returning home from Arbor, she bid farewell to Mo Lien and Duan Yu and directly sent her 2 younger siblings back to their respective courts. She didn't take such a trivial matter to heart. After returning to Nanju Garden, she had long tossed that miscellaneous person beyond the highest heavens. Chapter 661. When she woke up the next day, Xiaoyao walked in with a big smile on her face, holding a small box in her hand. "Miss, Xiao Yi came by just now. He received Lord's orders and said he wanted to give you something." The little fellow had just finished washing up. Hearing this, she stretched out her hand and gave a small yawn. She nodded and said, "What is it?" "Finish the porridge first and fill your stomach. You can have lunch later." Xiaoyao handed her a small bowl of red date porridge and said with a smile. "Xiaoyao, you were guarding outside the whole night?" "Yes, Mississippi." Xiaoyao nodded her head and took a small box and placed it on the table. "Don't guard tonight, go to sleep. What danger can there be in your own home?" Arbor put down the bowl that she had eaten 2 mouthfuls of porridge and took the small box that Xiaoyao had placed on the table. Opening it, her eyes slightly flashed. Inside the small box, there was a vermilion pill that was neatly placed. The pill veins were purple and the pill body was floating with extraordinary splendor. "This beautifying pill is indeed a good thing." Arbor reached out her hand and stroked it. If she directly added something to it, it would be too much of a waste of this pill. How about? Arbor pursed her lips and thought of another plan. With a "pa" sound, she closed the lid of the box and handed the small box back to Xiaoyao. "Xiaoyao, give this beautifying pill to my mother for her to consume. Later, I'll make another one for myself." Originally, she wanted to directly tamper with this beautifying pill and then give it to that consort Zheng to enjoy. But now, she changed her mind. Humph, such a good thing, naturally she couldn't let that woman take advantage of it. It was just right to show filial piety to her own mother. "Yes, Mississippi." "Xiaoyao will go now and be back soon." Xiaoyao chuckled, took the small box and quickly walked out the door. Arbor continued to drink a few mouthfuls of red date porridge. With a move of her profound sense, the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron abruptly jumped out of her conscious and steadily landed on the floor of the room. In an instant, it grew to the height of half a person. Arbor recited the names of a few more medicinal herbs and had Qiuqiu deliver them to her. After she finished eating the porridge, she slowly began to process the few medicinal herbs on hand. After removing the dregs, only the essence of the herb was left. Arbor tossed it into the cauldron, and the cauldron immediately changed. The red cauldron flame ignited on its own, and the red copper cauldron instantly became transparent. The medicinal cauldron slowly rotated, and the star on the cauldron that was emitting a stream of light suddenly lit up. This beautifying pill that she had added a touch of the pure heat poison nether star seed should taste extremely good. Arbor supported his chin with one hand and glanced at the cauldron. He couldn't help but curl his lips in satisfaction. This cauldron normally looked very unremarkable, but unexpectedly, it was very beautiful when refining pills. The entire red copper cauldron had become transparent, and she could even clearly see the style of the fire control inside the cauldron. The fire control was very perfect, and the cauldron automatically made an accurate judgment based on the degree of burning of the herbs. This meant that she didn't need to constantly watch from the side and constantly control the fire, saving her a lot of time and energy. Miss Qiao was a bit happy. Sure enough, a good cauldron was twice the result with half the effort on the path of refining pills. With such a comparison, her set of lousy medicine refining tools could really be thrown to the back of her mind. Miss Qiao leisurely walked to the small table beside the bed and sat down. She took out a pure white jade communication tablet from her inner world and drew a few strokes on it with a talisman brush. In a flash, both the hidden pavilion and the night pavilion received a message from their mistress. Spread the news that Morning Sunlight Pavilion will publicly auction the exceptional beautifying pill in 3 days. Chapter 662. Ding! A faint sound came from inside the cauldron. From the moment the herbs were put in to the moment the pill was formed, Arbor didn't even need to poke a finger. It was also because this beautifying pill was only a high-grade pill that Arbor didn't need to use mystic energy to increase the heat. In half a cup of tea's time, the pills were formed. This kind of speed made Miss Chow very satisfied. With a sweep of her sleeve, a faint fragrance followed the 2 pills that jumped out of the cauldron, assailing her nostrils. As soon as Wei Ziqin stepped through the door, she took a deep breath of the fragrance. With a flushed face, she cried out in pleasant surprise, "Daughter! You're refining pills. Did mother disturb you?" Arbor couldn't help but want to facepalm. She always felt that her mother was unusually happy that she could refine pills. "Mother, I've already finished refining." Arbor directly recalled the 9 stars mirroring the moon cauldron, which had extinguished its own cauldron fire, into her conscious. She put the 2 beautifying pills that had just come out of the cauldron and added ingredients into 2 exquisite wooden boxes. TSK, she only wanted to make 1 beautifying pill with added ingredients. She didn't expect the cauldron to make 2 for her. Wei Ziqin hurriedly jogged over and took one of the wooden boxes to look at it happily. Her mouth kept muttering, "Daughter, this pill is really well refined." Looking at this pill, it was sparkling white and translucent, small and exquisite. There was a faint purple pattern on the pill's body that flickered with light. As an amateur, she felt very happy looking at it. "Mother." Arbor helplessly helped her mother to sit down. In passing, she took the wooden box from her mother's hands and put it together with the other wooden box into her inner world, so as to prevent it from being carelessly placed and accidentally eaten. "Jojo, this beautifying pill that you gave mother, why don't you keep it for yourself?" Wei Ziqin took out a small box from her pocket and said, "Mother is already so old, what need is there for beautifying?" "Mother, look, I can refine it myself. Those 2 pills just now were both beautifying pills. You can have as many as you want. This pill is for you to eat, so hurry and consume it. It's also beneficial to your body." Xiao Mu poured a cup of tea while urging her mother to consume it. Wei Ziqin chuckled as she glanced at her daughter. Then, she complied and swallowed the beautifying pill. "Mother, the effect of this beautifying pill is somewhat similar to the gradual improvement of a person's appearance. The effect is not immediate. But slowly, after a month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll realize that your white hair is gone, and the fine wrinkles on your temples will also disappear. Your skin will become smoother, and your body will also have strength." Xiao Mu held her mother's arm, and the mother and daughter pair chatted merrily for a while. Wei Ziqin laughed heartily at her daughter's teasing. She poked her daughter's forehead and said, "You mischievous girl, you just like to cajole your mother." When the mother and son were in a good mood. On the other side, in State Uncle Zheng's estate, Jing Chao was currently throwing a fit at second manager Qi. "What are you doing? How did the meat that was about to be in our hands fly away?" A middle-aged man with a slightly pointed chin and a goatee wearing a cyan brocade robe paced back and forth in the living room with his hands clasped behind his back. Second manager Qi sprawled on the ground and said meekly and pitifully, "This subordinate also doesn't know how this happened. This subordinate just brought people to that merchant overnight, but they were all in vain. Later, when I asked around in the neighborhood, I found out that the merchant had already moved out overnight and even sold the beautifying pill to Morning Sunlight Pavilion." Jing Chao went up and gave second manager Qi a kick. "Useless dog slave. Tell me yourself, how are you going to explain this to Consort Zheng?" Chapter 663. This wretched servant, he didn't even settle the matter properly and was eager to claim credit in front of Consort Zheng. Otherwise, there would still be room for negotiation. Second manager Qi hastily said with a bitter expression, "Her Majesty already knows about the beautifying pill. We must get the beautifying pill for her no matter what." Zheng Chao's heart ached at the thought of going to Morning Sunlight Pavilion to bid for it at a high price. A few deep wrinkles appeared on his forehead, and Zheng Chao's voice turned cold as he said, "What can a mere Morning Sunlight Pavilion do if I insist on them handing over the beautifying pill?" Second manager Qi shuddered violently, and the cold sweat on his head fell with a splash. "Master, you absolutely can't do this. This servant heard that Morning Sunlight Pavilion's backer is extremely powerful. Do you still remember 2 years ago when the Hong Estate's concubine's son caused trouble at Morning Sunlight Pavilion and was chased out with a broken leg? That Hong Estate's concubine's son was beaten for nothing, and the Hong Estate couldn't get justice at all. It's said that the concubine's son is still half paralyzed even now. The other party can even touch a century-old Hong Estate, not to mention an aristocratic family like ours that has just established a foothold in the capital. Second Manager Qi hastily mediated. Zheng Chao's brows furrowed tightly. He had also heard about this matter. That old madam of the Hong Estate was said to be the sister of the current Empress Dowager. The entire Hong Estate was related to the Empress Dowager by marriage, yet they dared to make a move at Morning Sunlight Pavilion and let people come in and out without being able to find fault with them. Such a powerful force indeed couldn't be easily provoked. Sigh. Zheng Chao sighed, feeling somewhat defeated. Qi Ming, this beautifying pill, no matter the price, we have to get our hands on it before we talk about anything else. Sister has been demoted to consort, so she must be in a bad mood recently. If we choose to go against her wishes at this juncture, our Jing estate will definitely be blamed as well. Zheng Chao understood this sister of his very well. If they went against her wishes in this matter, she would definitely remember it. She was a scheming person, and who knew when she would be promoted to consort again. After all, the great king had doted on his sister greatly all these years. How could old feelings be broken so quickly? Let the manor calculate how many profound stones we can use. It's said that Morning Sunlight Pavilion also collects rare-colored glass gems. If you don't have enough magnetite, you can add on some amber-colored glass. Let's see if Morning Sunlight Pavilion will accept it. It's said that the imperial court wants to create a kind of profound coin for circulation. It's made from profound stone, so maybe it'll be more convenient for transactions in the future. Zheng Chao sighed again. If you really can't do it, you can go to the rooms of the various young ladies and young masters and see if there are any profound armaments that you can sell to Morning Sunlight Pavilion at a discount. Hopefully, it won't come to that. A small beauty pill shouldn't have a sky-high price. He just hoped that the day of the auction would go smoothly and that there wouldn't be so many people fighting over this beauty pill with them. The more Zheng Chao thought about it, the more upset he felt. He simply flung his sleeves and threw this matter to Second Manager Qi to handle while he went out to find his concubine to relieve his boredom. Qi Ming scowled miserably and ran to the senior manager to ask for money, only to be berated by the senior manager. The Zheng estate's situation had been terrible for the past 2 years. Especially after the zombie outbreak, the estate's income was barely enough to make ends meet. Relying on the old master's meager salary from the imperial court, it was not enough to support the operation of the estate. In addition, there were many people in the Jing estate, including all sorts of concubine-born children. Other than sixth young master, all of them were gluttonous and lazy. It was over. Chapter 664. Qi Ming followed the senior manager to the accounts room. After settling the accounts, there really weren't many magnetite available in the estate that could be used. There were only a dozen or so pieces of high-grade magnetite and about 100 pieces of mid-grade magnetite. With the addition of a box of colored glass gems, Qi Ming's confidence was lacking, so he could only report this matter to Zheng Chao. Zheng Chao's one sentence caused chaos in the concubines' rooms. Things like the fifth young master was going to hang himself after stealing the fifth young master's mystic weapon, and the third young miss was going to commit suicide after taking the third young miss's private jewelry. Zheng Chao was infuriated by the series of minor incidents that happened in the Jing estate over the past 3 days. He ordered that anyone who continued to cause trouble would be kicked out of the Jing estate. After the pressure was suppressed, although the entire Jing estate was silent, those concubines and young misses were secretly wiping their tears in their own courtyards all day long. Each and every one of them cried to the heavens and the earth, saying that they couldn't live anymore and that in the future, they would have to beg for food on the streets and so on. This caused the servants in the estate to secretly laugh as they watched the good show of their masters. Zheng Chao spent the past 3 days in this vexed state until Morning Sunlight Pavilion's auction today. He decided to bring second manager Chi with him to personally make a trip there. This was called cutting off all means of retreat and sinking all boats. He was determined to obtain the beautifying pill no matter what. He was already so miserable. If he still couldn't obtain the beautifying pill and curry favor with his sister, his future days would probably be even more miserable than they were now. Morning Sunlight Pavilion's auction date was always set at the beginning of the month. However, this time, it was a special auction for the precious beautifying pill, so the time was a bit arbitrary and it was set at noon. It had to be said that this beautifying pill was really quite popular. All the noble ladies in the capital had sent people to inquire about it. Even if they didn't have the ability to bid for it, they still sent people to participate in this grand auction today. Jing Chao entered the auction house with second manager Chi and his eyelids couldn't help but twitch when he saw the hall full of people. Fuck, so many people. They couldn't all be here for the beautifying pill, right? Inside the exclusive luxurious private room on the second floor, Arbor had already run over with his two younger siblings to occupy seats and watch the show. At this moment, the three siblings were chatting while munching on a small bag of melon seeds. Huifeng coughed lightly and said, "Crown Princess, the Jing clan's people have come." Arbor got up and walked to the window. He looked down and saw a middle-aged man with a goatee. He was wearing a green robe and had his hands behind his back as he walked up the stairs to the second floor. "Have him go to the main hall." Arbor waved his small hand and turned to glance at Huifeng. The corner of Huifeng's mouth twitched, and he hastily turned to leave the private room to handle matters. "Sister, why do you care where he sits?" Only the three siblings were left in the private room. Xiao Lin muttered while cracking the sunflower seeds. "Let him sit in the box on the second floor." "How am I going to watch his expression change?" Arbor snorted. "Just wait and see. He's going to be so angry that he's going to vomit blood." The door to the private room suddenly opened, and Duan Yu and Imo Lien walked in one after another, followed by Situ Yi, who coughed lightly. Duan Yu raised his brows and asked with a chuckle, who was angered to the point of vomiting blood. "Zheng Chao." Arbor pulled her two younger siblings to the side and gave up a seat for the three people. "Little junior sister, this is your true face." Situ Yi's praise immediately attracted Duan Yu's eye roll. "Brother Situ, you were most likely guessing at the Qin estate that day, right?" "Of course not. Little junior sister is so distinctive. Who wouldn't recognize her stoic face?" Chapter 665. Your senior brother Situ is spouting nonsense. Duan Yu turned to smile at Arbor. "He just guessed it." Situ Yi waved his hand. "Don't listen to Duan Yu's nonsense. Little junior sister, your expression has been the same for many years. I can see through it at a glance. Why would I need to guess?" Arbor reflexively touched his small face and thought, "Looks like I have to pay attention when I disguise myself next time. It's best if I can make an expressive face so that I won't be exposed immediately." Imo Lien couldn't help raising her brows when she saw the little fellow's pensive expression. "What are you thinking about with such a serious expression? You can't be thinking of making an expressive disguise face to fool me next time, right?" Duan Yu. Xiao Mu immediately turned her head away guiltily and walked over to open the door and walk out on her own. The quarrel at the top of the stairs grew louder and louder. Jing Chao was blocked on the stairs with his hands behind his back, so he was so angry that his face was turning green. The manager of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's capital branch was a middle-aged man in his 40s. He had a smooth and affable face and was quite eloquent in his speech. With just a few words, he made Jing Chao, who was about to explode, gasp for breath. "All of the private rooms upstairs have already been reserved. Others have already reserved them 3 days ago, so our Morning Sunlight Pavilion can't not play by the rules, right? The Song Estate's second miss is also sitting in the main hall downstairs right now, so there's nothing we can do about it. It's just that too many people have come to participate in the auction this time." Jing Chao angrily flicked his sleeve. "Let's go." Jing Chao angrily led second manager Qi downstairs. He wished for nothing more than to immediately leave Morning Sunlight Pavilion and swagger away. They actually dared to make him, state Uncle Zheng, sit in the main hall and fight over the beautifying pill with a bunch of commoners? When he, Jing Chao, went to other auction houses, which one of them didn't deferentially wait on him and give him the best treatment? Unlike this Morning Sunlight Pavilion, who actually dared to treat him like this. It was simply preposterous. Second manager Qi was so anxious that he was about to cry. Lord, if we leave now, what should we do about the beautifying pill? Jing Chao was taken aback before he angrily retorted, buy it elsewhere. But they're only selling it here. Preposterous. Zheng Chao's footsteps stiffened slightly. He stiffened his neck and mechanically turned around, following the bowing second manager Qi as he swallowed his anger and walked toward the front row of the lobby. Yo, state Uncle Zheng, nice to meet you. A person in the front row suddenly stood up and bowed to him with a flattering expression. It's Hong Cheng from the Hong clan. Zheng Chao glanced at him, and the corners of his mouth twitched into a fake smile. Then, he sat down beside Hong Cheng. Is Lord Zheng here to purchase the beautifying pill for Her Highness Zheng? Hong Cheng said with a polite smile, I'm also here to take a look at this beautifying pill that has been rumored to be somewhat miraculous. Zheng Chao recalled that Hong Cheng was also a senior alchemist, and could not help but ask, Grandmaster Hong's alchemy skills are said to be extraordinary, I wonder if you can refine this beauty pill. Hong Cheng said proudly, refining the beautifying pill is naturally not a problem. However, state Uncle Zheng did not know that the herbs needed to refine the beautifying pill were extremely hard to find. In particular, a senior medicinal herb called the look-setting Ganoderma is practically extinct on our Sikong planet. Hong Cheng sighed and said, otherwise, if Lord Zheng could find this look-setting Ganoderma, I would definitely be able to refine a senior medicinal herb for Her Highness Zheng. Chapter 666. Jing Chao nearly couldn't hold back his temper and spat all over his face. If I could freaking find the exotic herbs for that look-fixing Ganoderma, would I need you to refine the beautifying pill for me? Do you think you're the only high-level pill refiner in the pill union? How rare. Arbor closed the door and expressionlessly said, Jing Chao is sitting with that nuisance from the pill union. Which nuisance? The one who stole my cauldron. Mo Lien stood up and walked to the window. She looked down and chuckled. This person is from the Hong clan. What Hong clan or Lon clan, I don't care who he is. He stole my cauldron first, and now he's sitting with Jing Chao. Anyway, he's a nuisance. Arbor pursed his lips. The capital's 8 great patrician families. This Hong clan is one of them, Duan you said. What 8 great patrician families? Arbor asked offhandedly. The Talisman patrician family, the Mu clan, the Elixir patrician family, the Qin estate, and Duan Yu's concealed weapons patrician family, the Duan clan. Mo Lien continued, aside from them, there's also the Wu clan, the Hong clan, and... The little fellow had long lost her patience to listen to those 8 great patrician families and ran to the window to look around. Mo Lien couldn't help but chuckle and shut her mouth. Forget it, it didn't matter if she remembered them or not. She would talk about it when she encountered them in the future. It's starting. When Hui Feng came in, he had someone bring in some snacks for the 2 little foodies. He then changed the tea to a new round of hot tea before ordering everyone to withdraw. Everyone chatted as they ate while observing the auction below. Apart from the beautifying pill, there were naturally other mystic weapons, high-grade jewelry, and the like. The items that Jing Chao plundered from his concubine's children were also on the auction list. These items had all been sent to the auction house 2 days ago, so Mo Lien was naturally very clear about them. After a rough calculation, the total amount that Jing Chao could take out was only around 50 pieces of high-grade magnetite when converted into magnetite. However, this was still considered quite a fortune. Even in peacetime, one could be considered a nouveau riche if they could take out 50 or so pieces of high-grade magnetite at once, not to mention that it was just to buy a beautifying pill. Not long after, the steward of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's Beijing branch, Lu Yan, knocked on the door and entered with a smile while carrying a tray. "Your Highness, State Uncle Zheng wants to bid for a 500-year-old snow ginseng." "Let me see." Arbor stretched out his small hand, and Lu Yan hurriedly handed over the tray. Arbor lifted the cover on the tray and examined the 500-year-old snow ginseng in his hand. Then, in front of everyone, he openly confiscated it. Lu Yan's mouth was slightly agape as he turned to look at the crown prince, who had his hand on his forehead. "Your Highness, your wife has gone too far." Very quickly, Qiuqiu carved out an identical 500-year-old snow ginseng and handed it over to her. "All right, go and return it to him." He told him that there was no such rule in the auction house, and that the auction items would be decided 2 days in advance. How could there be any last-minute additions? "Go and tell Jing Chao that we can't break the auction rules for him alone." Arbor spoke sternly and righteously. Lu Yan received the tray with a dazed expression and lowered his head to look at the snow ginseng. "Crown Princess, this snow ginseng is there a problem?" "No, no problem. It would be strange if there wasn't a problem. Didn't the Crown Princess confiscate the snow ginseng just now? Why did she return it so quickly?" Our dear Crown Princess swept a disdainful glance at the snow ginseng. "I'm not interested in this kind of 100-year-old trash. Go and return it to him." "Yes, yes, yes." Chapter 667. After Steward Lu retreated, the private room was quiet. Her 2 sisters-in-law, 3 men, and 5 pairs of eyes stared at her without blinking. "What is it?" Arbor calmly returned their gaze. Whether it was the appearance or smell of the 500-year-old snow ginseng that Jojo gave Steward Lu, it was exactly the same as the one she'd confiscated earlier. But according to the little fellow's temperament, she wouldn't take something out of her inner world for no reason. Unless... Cough. "May I ask what exactly is this 500-year-old snow ginseng that you exchanged with Sir Zheng?" Duan Yu asked curiously. "A tonic." The little fellow propped her chin on her hand and stood by the window, admiring Sir Zheng's gloomy expression when the snow ginseng was returned. Lu Yan, this guy, was especially reliable. He even specially returned the item to Jing Chao in front of everyone and strongly requested him to inspect it once to ensure that there were no mistakes before leaving with his men. This waiter was outstanding. Our dear Qiao Mu pursed her lips and nodded approvingly. Ahem. Situi pretended to take a sip of tea and asked, "What tonic is it?" "White radish. It's especially good to eat in winter. Add some pork ribs to stew in a pot of soup and it's delicious. It's even more nutritious if it can be added to the dish with mutton," Arbor replied coolly. Pfft. Duan Yu was caught off guard and spat out his tea, coughing repeatedly as he choked. On the other hand, Situi had just swallowed his tea, so he didn't spit it out. At this time, he was holding his teacup in exasperation as he stared fixedly at that child. Look at this scammer. She used a white radish to exchange for someone else's 500-year-old snow ginseng. Most importantly, she could actually make an identical, 500-year-old snow ginseng and exchange it in such a short time. Not everyone could do this. No wonder Jing Chao was also so miserably tricked and took back that snow ginseng without the slightest suspicion. After all, the appearance and smell were exactly the same, and it was done in such a short time. Who could tamper with it like the little fellow? Qiuqiu's control over plants could be said to be a heaven-defying fortune. Any plant in its hands could be moved horizontally or vertically, and it could do whatever it wanted with it. This caused the little fellow to feel somewhat puzzled for a while. What exactly was Qiuqiu? What a magical tree! As they spoke, the climax of the auction arrived. When the auctioneer showered the beautifying pill with extravagant praises and announced the start of the auction, the price of the profound stones skyrocketed. It was only when the price reached 30 pieces of high-grade magnetite did the price slow down a little. Only 3 families were left on the stage, competing with each other for the right to bid. One of them was Jing Chao, the other was the family of the recently risen Hijaui, and the third was an old nanny sent by a wealthy family. The three of them were in a stalemate. Hijaui's family only announced that they would give up when the bidding price broke through 40 pieces of high-grade magnetite. However, the old granny sat there calmly and continued to raise the price. 43 pieces of high-grade profound stones, 44 pieces, 45 pieces. Jing Chao felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't help but fidget in his seat as cold sweat trickled down his forehead. Seeing this, Hong Cheng hurriedly said in order to curry favor with State Uncle Zheng, "I saw that State Uncle was in a hurry to sell that snow ginseng of excellent quality, but the auction house didn't agree. How about this? I'll pay twice the market price to buy this snow ginseng from State Uncle." Chapter 668. The two immediately completed their private transaction. Hong Cheng spent 24 pieces of high-grade magnetite to buy the white radish in Jing Chao's hand. Hong Cheng had won State Uncle Zheng's favor. He spent some money to curry favor with State Uncle Zheng and also solved State Uncle Zheng's financial crisis. Both of them were very satisfied and became bosom buddies on the spot. Their conversation also became a little more casual. State Uncle Zheng had 78 pieces of high-grade magnetite in his hands now, so he was much more confident. He didn't even frown when he raised the bid and was rather forthright. When the bid reached 65 pieces of high-grade magnetite, the old nanny clearly paused. State Uncle Zheng sighed in relief and immediately called out in a loud voice, 68 pieces of high-grade magnetite. The entire venue was in an uproar. Everyone stared at this high-spirited State Uncle Zheng as if they were looking at a second-rate nouveau riche. As expected of the great king's brother-in-law. He was just so freaking extravagant. Look at how forthright he was when he raised the bid. 3 pieces at once. Everyone worshipped nouveau riche Zheng, filling State Uncle Zheng's heart with arrogance. When the bid reached 70 pieces of high-grade magnetite, the old nanny finally gave in and fell silent. Everyone in the hall stood up and applauded enthusiastically. They cheered for State Uncle Zheng and loudly called out, "State Uncle Zheng, State Uncle Zheng." State Uncle Zheng's heart was thumping as he responded to the melon-eating crowd with smiles in his eyes. The auctioneer even gave a speech excitedly and enthusiastically. The atmosphere was at its most enthusiastic for a moment. The auctioneer's small hammer hit the auction stage again and again as he shouted passionately, 70 pieces of high-grade magnetite, going once. 70 pieces of high-grade magnetite, going twice. 70 pieces. 71. Arbor, who was sitting by the second-floor window, shouted irritably while cracking melon seeds. His icy voice cut into the crowd's excited cheers and instantly drenched everyone from head to toe like a basin of bone-chilling water, chilling their hearts. Arbor snorted and thought, "Are you all a bunch of idiots? As for clapping and cheering for State Uncle Zheng, what does it have to do with you melon-eating crowd when he bought a beautifying pill?" They even stood up and clapped their hands madly, loudly praising that idiot for having nothing better to do. Bam! State Uncle Zheng's legs went soft and he fell to the ground. Why? Oh heavens! It was not easy to get rid of that old nanny from who knows which mansion she came from, but where did this little fellow jump out and continue to bid? Pfft, ha 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 ha. Duan, you truly couldn't hold it in any more. He laughed so hard that he collapsed on the armchair. Oh, you did it on purpose, didn't you? He purposely poured a basin of ice water at such an exciting moment. Ah ha 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 ha. He couldn't take it anymore. He was laughing so hard that tears were about to come out. Situ-yi turned his face away. With one hand supporting his forehead, he laughed so hard that he slammed the table. On the other hand, Mo Lien calmly walked to Chow Mu's side and pulled over a stool to sit beside the window with her. The auctioneer stared blankly for a few seconds before continuing to shout in a professional manner, 71 pieces of high-grade magnetite, going once. Number. Wait. 72. Under second manager Chi's sharp reminder, State Uncle Zheng finally recovered his wits and shouted again with a sullen face. 73, 74, 75, 76. Arbor continuously shouted. The melon-eating crowd all looked towards the second-floor window with dumbfounded expressions. However, they couldn't see Arbor's small face clearly from their angle. Chapter 669. State Uncle Zheng rubbed his hands anxiously and looked at his bosom friend Hong Cheng. How many magnetite do you have on you? Lend them all to me, and I'll return them to you later. Hong Cheng was stupefied. He didn't expect that the 24 magnetite he sold to State Uncle Zheng for still wasn't enough for him to buy that beautifying pill. He wanted to refuse, but he was also afraid that State Uncle Zheng would bear a grudge against him. At this kind of life-and-death juncture, he had to put on a good performance. Hong Cheng gritted his teeth and said, I can only take out another 15 pieces of high-grade magnetite at most. Give them all to me. I'll give the beautifying pill to Her Majesty later, and Her Majesty will definitely bestow rewards. Jing Chao urged, take them all out right now. Hong Cheng dug out all his assets as his heart bled. State Uncle Zheng staked everything on this one throw and stood up, shouting with a flushed face, 93 pieces of high-grade magnetite. 95. Arbor continued to bid. Hong Cheng felt like the sky was about to collapse. Sure enough, State Uncle Zheng turned back and stared at him with bloodshot eyes. Hong Cheng, you've helped me this time, so help me to the end. I'll definitely remember your kindness, and it won't be a problem for you to soar in the future. Hong Cheng hesitated for a moment before steeling himself and saying, I only have 10 pieces of high-grade magnetite left. I really don't have any more. State Uncle Zheng also gritted his teeth and said angrily, 103 pieces of high-grade magnetite. If I still can't buy it, I won't buy it anymore. This time, the little fellow didn't make a sound and continued to crack her melon seeds. Are you sure those two have been squeezed dry? Seeing Huifeng enter, the little fellow only raised her head slightly and asked. Huifeng's mouth twitched. This subordinate guarantees that those two are so poor that they can pawn their pants. All right then. Arbor spread his small hands. Take these high-grade magnetite and distribute it to those who need it. Huifeng was startled and quickly turned to look at the Crown Prince. Seeing the Crown Prince nod, Huifeng's expression became abnormally excited all of a sudden. Yes. Thank you, Crown Princess, for your reward. 103 pieces of high-grade magnetite. Going thrice. Sold. Congratulations, Lord Zheng. Congratulations on obtaining a beautifying pill. State Uncle Zheng sat there as if he had just lost a loved one. There was not the slightest bit of joy on his face that was twisted with anger. Right now, all he wanted to do was to take his things home, hug his blanket and cry. For the sake of Her Highness Zheng's face, the entire Zheng estate had gone all out this time. State Uncle Zheng's hands trembled as he picked up the small box containing the beautifying pills. He abruptly raised his head and shot a torch-like gaze toward the window on the second floor. Right now, he really wanted to know who had jumped out to compete with him. Judging from the voice, it was definitely a young lady. Right now, he wanted to cut this girl into 1,000 pieces and put her to death. Unfortunately, the other party didn't show up, and he didn't want to stay here for even a second longer. After leaving Morning Sunlight Pavilion, State Uncle Zheng instructed the two subordinates behind him with a ferocious expression, you two stay here and keep an eye on her. If that woman from the private room on the second floor comes down, find a way to follow her home. This little bitch who dared to provoke him, he wanted her to pay the price. The two extremely vicious thugs from the Zheng estate nodded repeatedly in response. Unfortunately, they didn't see any lady come out from the door even when the lanterns were lit. Arbor had returned home early with his sister-in-law. He had already finished eating and was about to take a level 11 mystic breakthrough pill. Suddenly, he heard shuffling sounds from the door. I'll add more chapters today and tomorrow, but I'll add later. Chapter 670. The little fellow's hair stood on end, and a bad premonition slid through her heart. That rustling sound made her stare at the door vigilantly. As expected, she saw a white and soft little snake slithering in from the door. A pair of watery and round eyes looked at her adorably. The little snake carried an ugly floral cloth package and slithered around quickly. But before it could get close to the bed, it saw its little master jump up high. "Don't come over." Arbor stood on the bed with a blanket draped over her, and her eyes stared at the restless white snake defensively. The little white snake hurriedly shook its body and threw the floral cloth package on the ground. Then, it retreated a few steps and coiled itself up like a piece of dung. It looked at its little master pitifully. Arbor sat down with the blanket wrapped around her, and her face was stern and serious. "You're not allowed to sneak into my room in the middle of the night." The snake nodded its head pitifully, and the little white snake used its thin tail to poke the package on the floor. Arbor inexplicably felt that this little fellow was a little cute. Then, she subconsciously reached out and rubbed the goosebumps on her little paws. "Cute your sister." She didn't even know if a cold snake was poisonous. How could it be cute? An illusion. It must be her own illusion. She mustn't be moved by that snake's pretending to be weak. "Move away a little." Arbor jumped off the bed and waved her little hand at the snake. The little white snake rolled itself into a ball of white dough and rolled under the corner of the table. It stuck its little head out and looked at its little master with watery eyes. Arbor tentatively took 2 steps forward. Seeing that it didn't move, she was relieved and boldly took a few steps forward. Then, she squatted down in front of the floral cloth package. This time, the little white snake used the Cosmos treasure pouch to bring over a lot of medicinal herbs. Previously, when its little master was in a good mood when collecting medicinal herbs, it had left a deep impression on it. The little snake preliminarily confirmed that compared to gold, silver, and jewelry, its master seemed to like medicinal herbs more. Arbor also felt a little strange. He didn't know where the little snake had gotten so many different types of spirit flowers and plants. A very rare medicinal ingredient used to refine the beautifying pill, the look-setting Ganoderma, was also found for her by this snake. "You don't have to bring them back in the future," Arbor said casually as he tossed all the herbs in his Cosmos treasure pouch to Chocho. When she turned around, she saw the little white snake looking at her aggrievedly like a little wife. Its eyes were about to burst into tears. Now, even bringing over herbs that master liked was disdained. Sob. Arbor was baffled. He couldn't understand what little snake was trying to express with his resentful face. She only said calmly, "I have enough herbs for now. I don't know where you plucked them from, but after plucking so many of them, no matter how good the land is, it will eventually dry up. Let them grow well." The little white snake's resentful expression immediately disappeared, and it looked at Arbor with its pair of big, cute eyes. So the little master didn't dislike its herbs. Wasn't this cold-blooded snake's facial expression a little too rich? After Arbor finished collecting the herbs, she climbed onto the bed and raised her hand to yawn. "I'm going to rest." The little white snake rolled itself into an even smaller ball of dough and shrank under the cupboard. It had an "I won't disturb your rest" look on its face. Chapter 671. Arbor glanced at the snake and thought for a bit before walking down. She took a small basket covered in cotton wool and walked to the corner of the table. "Stay here and don't crawl around. You're not allowed to climb onto my bed." The little white snake nodded its head repeatedly and obediently moved its body. It curled up into a ball inside the small basket. Seeing that it was quite obedient, Arbor finally relaxed. She flipped onto the bed and pulled the covers over herself to sleep. The next morning, the first thing Arbor did when she woke up was to check on the snake. The little white snake obediently stayed in the small basket and didn't move at all. It was still in the same ball shape as yesterday. Seeing her look over, the little snake poked its head out of the basket. Arbor saw that it had stayed there the entire night without any signs of coming out. Her brows couldn't help but loosen a bit. This little snake wasn't as annoying as she had imagined. Mississippi Xiaoyao lifted the curtain and hurried in. She bowed and said, Wu family's eldest miss, Wu Xiaosu, requests an audience. Arbor had long forgotten about this person. Hearing this, she frowned and said, I won't see her. I don't know her. Xiao Yao knew that her young mistress would react this way. She smiled and said, Xiao Yao has already tactfully rejected Miss Wu and asked Miss Wu to return to the manor as soon as possible. It's a pity that Miss Wu won't listen to me. She's standing outside the Marquis' estate right now and won't leave no matter what. Then let her be, Arbor said expressionlessly. If someone likes to stand outside, then let her stand. Was she, Arbor, the kind of person who would hastily bring people in for the sake of the two families' reputation? The more she was threatened, the more she loathed it. If she wanted to embarrass herself, no one could stop her. She could stand outside as long as she wanted. Where's Xiao Yi? Let him in. I want to ask him about yesterday's incident at the Jing estate. Arbor put the small basket on the table and met the little white snake's round eyes. Xiao Yao exclaimed, Miss, a snake entered the room. Arbor looked at her in amusement. This is my summoned beast. Summoned beast? Xiao Yao was a little surprised. That day, Miss summoned it in the garden. Then the summoning didn't fail. It's just that this little snake doesn't look mighty or ferocious at all. Will it be of use at a crucial moment? The little snake stared at Xiao Yao with its human-like eyes. It's the one who's been giving me gifts for the past 2 days, Arbor said. Xiao Yao's eyes widened when she heard that. She raised her hand to show her height. That red coral? That's right, and the rest of the herbs were all given by it. Xiao Yao immediately looked at Lord Snake in worship, as if she was looking at a nouveau riche. Then, Miss, should I go prepare some frogs, mice, or something to feed the little snake? Unexpectedly, the moment she said that, the little white snake immediately turned its little head proudly and disdainfully. Its pair of watery eyes looked pitifully at Arbor. Xiaomu glanced at it and asked on a whim, do you want congee or not? The little snake nodded its little head furiously. What kind of snake is this? It doesn't eat living things but actually drinks porridge. It's so human-like. Xiao Yao muttered as she walked out and called in Xiao Yi, who was waiting outside the door. Crown Princess. Xiao Yi bowed after entering the door. What happened after yesterday? Arbor asked curiously. State Uncle Zheng sent the beautifying pill into the palace overnight and presented it to Her Highness Consort Zheng. I'll see you tomorrow, Bo. Chapter 672. Arbor nodded his little head in satisfaction. Younghe must be very happy, right? That's right. Xiao Yi said. Consort Zheng rewarded State Uncle Zheng quite a bit on the spot, including fine jade, jewelry, gold, silver, and riches. However, the value of those things paled in comparison to the 103 high-grade magnetite that State Uncle Zheng took out. Lord Zheng could only suffer in silence, unable to voice out his bitterness, and returned to his residence listlessly. Arbor sneered. Just let Younghe slowly enjoy that beautifying pill. When Xiao Yao returned with a bowl of porridge, Xiao Yi had already retreated as per the order. A light thud came from the window. Arbor didn't even turn his head as he stared at the little white snake whose head was almost buried in the bowl of porridge. This little snake was especially particular when it ate. After the entire bowl of millet porridge entered its mouth, it even raised its little head and used its eyes to signal Xiao Yao to take a white cloth from the side to wipe it. Xiao Yao muttered, "What the hell," as she hurriedly took a white cloth to wipe the snake's head. Arbor couldn't help but chuckle. The next second, she felt her body lighten, and she landed in a comfortable and warm embrace. "Jojo, I knocked on the window, but you ignored me," Mo Lien grumbled aggrievedly. "Even if I ignored you, didn't you still come in?" Arbor turned to shoot him a glance and poked his chest. "When are we leaving for Bailon?" "In 2 days, I guess." After I told Royal Father about this, he strongly objected. "I have to convince him." "What is he objecting for?" "You're not going to Bailon to play, you're going to inspect the food base." That's a serious matter that concerns the country and its people. He keeps you tied up in the palace all day and makes you represent him in state affairs. He really has it easy being this great king. Emolian chuckled softly. He reached out to cup his darling's little face and looked at her carefully. Jojo, you're feeling sorry for your husband. Arbor rolled his eyes at him and poked him hard with his little finger. We'll set off in 3 days at the latest. All right. Emolian wrapped his arms around her waist and swayed her slender body. I'll listen to you. His gaze met with the little white snake's round eyes. Emolien's expression changed slightly. Her hand shot out like lightning to grab the white snake. However, in the blink of an eye, the little white snake flashed through the air like a bolt of lightning. Its body suddenly shrunk to less than an inch, and it swiftly dodged Emolien's claw. Ha! Arbor's eyes widened slightly. This white snakelet could actually shrink into such a small form and successfully and swiftly evade Emolien's claw. Master! There are bad guys here who want to catch me. The white snakelet twisted its body and swiftly flew towards Xiao Mu. Arbor instinctively shrunk her body and hurriedly hid her 2 little hands in Emolien's arms. In the blink of an eye, she saw the little white snake writhing its small body in the middle of pouncing on her. It suddenly stopped in midair and looked at her pitifully with tears in its eyes. Ah! Why did it feel like she had bullied a snake? But it was cold and crooked. It didn't feel good to the touch. She didn't want to touch it from the bottom of her heart. Master, the little white snake's big, cute eyes actually started to tear up. Arbor. You're a cold-blooded animal. Why are you like a human? You have 7 emotions and 6 desires and you can even cry. Emolian immediately looked warily at the stupid snake that was trying to act cute. With a tap of her finger, a bewitching red light shot toward the cold-blooded animal. The light was about to hit the little white snake's skin. Xiao Mu abruptly jumped up. Chapter 673. Emolian, don't bully it. Xiao Mu abruptly jumped up and stretched out her small paws to hug that stupidly adorable white snake that had stiffened in midair. She watched as it froze in midair like an idiot and saw that Emolien's cluster of flames was about to pounce on its body. If it was roasted like this, it would turn into a crispy snake. Master! The white snake's watery amber eyes revealed deep admiration. It twisted its body and was about to take advantage of the situation to burrow into Jojo's clothes. Emolien's eyes were sharp and her hands were fast. Taking advantage of the fact that the snake was unprepared, she clamped its head between her hands and casually flung it. With a whoosh, the white snake flew in a perfect arc in the air and was directly thrown out of the half-opened window by Emolien. Emolien's heart was stifled. Why did she have to guard against people and also beasts? Looking at the dazed look on the white snake's face, Emolien imagined it was obviously a lecherous snake. How could she leave it in her baby's room? Absolutely not. What are you doing? When Arbor saw that Emolien actually threw the pitiful white snake out of the window, she was speechless and helpless for a moment. Just as she was about to walk to the window, her little hand was pulled back by Emolien. Jojo, it's a male snake. You can't hide it in your clothes. Especially not on your chest. Emolien said with a serious face. Arbor couldn't help but roll her eyes. I just wanted to take it and put it back in the basket. Now look, I don't know where you threw it. Emolien snorted and glanced at the door. It came back on its own. The white snakelet slithered up the table and gazed pitifully at Xiao Mu, tears dripping down from its large eyes. This thing pretending to be pitiful. Emolien was just about to pick it up and throw it away. Hence, Xiao Mu stretched out her hand to stop him. After glaring at him irritably, she lifted up that pitiful snakelet. What are you doing? Don't bully children. What little kid? He dared to bet with Duan Yu's head. This weak-looking little white snake was definitely an adult snake. Moreover, judging from the speed and strength it had hidden just now, one could tell that it was an exceptionally black-bellied fellow. Mo Lien's gaze coldly fell on the snake's head. Suddenly, the little white snake turned its head and fiercely glared at him. Damn, he was indeed a scheming snake. Hey, hey! He was glaring at him behind his baby's back. Sigh. Boys were all brave and fierce. Even a man could fight with a male snake. Xiao Mu placed the little white snake into the basket and stroked its head. Suddenly, his fingers paused. She abruptly discovered that this little white snake didn't feel icy cold to the touch. Instead, it felt as smooth and warm as a piece of beautiful jade. She clearly remembered the first time this snake appeared beside her bed. That kind of soft, greasy, and cold rubbing sensation gave her goosebumps. But now, what was with this warm feeling? Master, the little white snake's head rubbed against Arbor's finger back and forth with great enjoyment. The more student Mo Lien looked, the angrier he got. Alright, stop stroking. The more she stroked, the more excited this damn snake got. Mo Lien hastily pulled Arbor's small hand back and held it in his own as he pulled her outside. Come, accompany me to greet father and mother. Mo Lien's finger moved slightly, and an ink-colored ring silently hovered above his finger. Chapter 674. Arbor's eyes brightened slightly. He reached out to take the ring and put it on his finger. Once he activated his mystic energy, a transparent eggshell defensive barrier appeared around her. She could feel that the defensive power was much stronger than before. This defensive barrier had definitely been reinforced. Mo Lien. The little fellow tilted her head and reached out to hold his large palm. Mo Lien lowered his head slightly and lightly flicked her forehead. He lifted her up in an instant and looked deeply into her eyes with a smile. Do you want to return the favor? This husband will gladly accept it. Darling Qiao's little face was instantly dyed with a layer of red clouds, and she looked around with a guilty conscience. There's no one. Mo Lien laughed in spite of himself. Darling dislikes those annoying people who come in and out all day, so didn't Darling chase them all away? Only Xiao Yao is left, so she hid far away long ago. That's right, she had already chased them out of Nanzhu Garden. She wasn't a particular person and didn't need others to take care of her daily needs. Then give me a kiss as a return gift. Mo Lien turned his head and was about to press down on the little fellow's lips. Daughter, Papa Qiao shouted. The two separated immediately upon contact. Prince Mo's hand trembled and he almost dropped the baby in guilt. Our dear Qiao Mu's face was as red as a tomato, and she couldn't help but lower her head. Prince Mo's heart felt even more stifled. My dear father. You really know how to pick the right time to come. Qiao Zhongbang strode in as if he was flying. He immediately saw Prince Mo and his daughter standing on the left and right, leaving quite a bit of space between them. As a father, he was very satisfied. He knew that the crown prince wasn't someone who would mess around. Look, he was doing a surprise inspection this time. Little Mo, this child, was standing beside his daughter in a cultured and refined manner. He even maintained a distance from her. What a considerate child. The more he looked at him, the more he liked him. At this time, Papa Qiao had completely forgotten that the crown prince didn't even enter through the front door. He directly touched the back window and barged into the boudoir. Crown Prince. Father, don't be so courteous. Qiao Qiao and I just happened to be going to greet you and Mom, so let's talk on the way. Crown Prince Mo stealthily tugged at Xiao Qiao's small hand as he welcomed Xiao Qiao outside with a smile. Meanwhile, in the imperial study of the palace of the king, the great king smiled as he summoned the Qin estate's father and son trio. He waved his hand and said, Patriarch Qin, the two young masters Qin have been wronged. The crown prince is a careful and steady child. Most of the things that I did not consider thoroughly, he was able to handle them very well. The reason why so many soldiers have been dispatched to guard the estate is because they are worried that some unforeseen event will occur in the Qin estate. Great king is too serious. Qin Guelu hastily cupped his hands and said with a smile, Your Highness the Crown Prince's actions are exactly what this Qin wishes for. Now that the 10-day deadline was up, no one in the Qin estate had shown any signs of abnormalities. Everyone could see with a single glance that this was the case. Even if some zombies appear in the capital in the future, it shouldn't be blamed on our Qin estate. That's right, that's right. The Great King chuckled and pointed at the seat in front of him. Patriarch Qin, please take a seat. Thank you, Great King. Qin Guelu thanked him and sat down. First Qin and Omega Kotoku walked to stand behind their father with their heads slightly lowered. Xian present the box to the Great King. Yes, father. First Qin walked forward and bowed slightly. He raised the treasure box above his head with both hands. The Great King's face lit up, and a satisfied smile appeared in his eyes. He glanced at Gong Chang who was standing to the side. Chapter 675. The latter hurriedly understood and hurriedly walked down the steps to take the box that eldest Qin presented. There are 3 meridian pacifying pills inside. The 50 strengthening pills are our Qin estate's offering to His Majesty as a token of our sincerity. Qin Guelu lowered his head slightly and said, "This Qin is also very apologetic that His Highness the Crown Prince was startled at the Qin estate." Qin Guelu looked up, and Omega Kotoku walked out from behind his father. He opened a long box and presented it to the Great King. The old Great King looked down and grinned from ear to ear. This 400-year-old ginseng was obtained by chance when my son went out for training. Now, I present it to His Highness the Crown Prince as an apology gift. I hope that the Great King won't dislike this Qin's small token of appreciation, Qin Guelu said with a smile. Good, good, good. The Great King nodded happily. Gong Chang send someone to deliver this to the Eastern Palace. Since the Qin family was so tactful, the Great King naturally removed their restraining order and unsealed the Qin estate. After placating Qin Guelu and giving him some rewards, he ordered someone to escort the 3 people from the Qin estate out of the palace. After leaving the palace, Qin Guelu wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and sighed in relief. Where are you going? Qin Guelu called out when he saw Omega Kotoku turn to leave. You guys go back first. I have some matters to attend to. Omega Kotoku left these words coldly before swaggering off. Qin Guelu looked uneasily at Qin Xian. Is second young master angry? Qin Xian swept him a glance. Qin Guelu hurriedly added, but I have no choice. After all, we're in the lower star domain right now, and it's not good to openly clash with the old Great King of the Mo Kingdom. I can only wrong eldest young master and second young master and throw some benefits to the old Mo King and resolve the problem at hand first. Qin Xian said with a spurious smile, he's not angry. It's just that this time, you acted on your own initiative and even went for wool and came home shorn. It's a bit vexing. Qin Guelu stiffened, and he was inwardly shocked. They knew. Don't tell me you think that Omega Kotoku hasn't noticed the little tricks that you and Shantian Mansion have done? Qin Guelu's cold sweat instantly dripped from his forehead. The secret exchange of pill recipes with Shantian Prefecture's Cho-san had been carried out behind the backs of those 2. But now, it had been exposed so blatantly. Eldest young master, this subordinate surname is Qin. Born as a member of the Qin family, I will die as a ghost of the Qin family. I will never betray the Qin family. This subordinate was only. It was only because I coveted those few rare pill formulas that Master Cho-san provided that I repeatedly colluded with Cho-san for benefits. Idiot. Qin Xian glanced coldly at Qin Guelu. You don't even know that you're being used as a pawn. If it weren't for second brother helping you clean up the mess, do you think the Qin estate would have been able to extricate itself from the corpse puppet incident so quickly? Qin Guelu's pupils contracted as he looked incredulously at eldest young Sir Qin. Eldest young sir, please speak frankly. Do you know how many people that person sent to infiltrate the Qin estate to search for evidence? If it weren't for second brother erasing all the secret letters and correspondence that you colluded with Shantian Prefecture, you would have already been sent to prison. Heh, perhaps your head would have already fallen to the ground. Eldest young Sir Qin nonchalantly spat out these words, but Qin Guilu's expression changed drastically, and his pupils contracted. Why, you're talking about His Highness the Crown Prince? Qin Guilu turned pale with fright. That man is vicious, merciless, and cold-hearted. Chapter 676. Qin Xian sneered. Once he obtains evidence, the entire Qin estate won't be spared. Qin Guilu, be more careful in the future. You aren't his match. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled and didn't say anything else. Leaving the dumbstruck Qin Guilu behind, he turned and floated away. Qin Guilu simply didn't expect that the two young sirs had already secretly exchanged blows with the crown prince. He wiped the cold sweat from his forehead, and a wry smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It turned out that his little actions had all fallen into the young sir's eyes. To think that he had been so pleased with himself in the dark. Qin Guilu had to admit that he was old. These young children were truly each more ruthless than the other. Omega Kotoku sat in a carriage and coldly recited the name of a place. After the carriage set off, a large crowd of cheering girls rushed out from the corner of the street after hearing the news. They had all rushed over to watch the young sir of the Qin estate, but unfortunately, they were half a beat too late and only ate a mouthful of dust. The carriage stopped in front of a house, far away in a corner. The carriage driver didn't know what his master was waiting for, but he didn't dare to ask. He could only wait silently with his master. A small blue and white palanquin was parked in front of the residence's entrance. A young miss stood in front of the palanquin accompanied by a maidservant with a somewhat gloomy expression. Omega Kotoku was silently waiting for something inside the carriage, and that young miss was also waiting at someone else's door. After waiting for a full 3 hours, it was already past lunchtime. The carriage driver opened his mouth and carefully called out, "Second young sir." Then, he heard a creak from the other end, and the residence's main door was suddenly pulled open inwardly. Two figures walked out of the door hand in hand, followed by a male and female bodyguard maidservant. Omega Kotoku's deep gaze locked onto the young lady who stepped out of the door first through the carriage's curtain, his aura gloomy. "Eldest Miss Xiao, is this your original appearance? That Mu Xiao Bao is also a fake name." Young Sir Omega Kotoku's cold gaze landed on Miss Xiao's small hand that the crown prince was holding, and he instinctively felt uncomfortable. How could he let another man hold her soft and delicate hand? It felt like something in the depths of Xiao Chen's heart had been torn apart, making him feel somewhat uneasy. Omega Kotoku stared coldly at the two men. The glint and shadow of the sword in his eyes were almost tangible. So much so that Arbor and Imo Lien both turned to look at the carriage. Separated by the thick curtain of the carriage, the two men's cold gazes met in a straight line. After a moment, Omega Kotoku clenched his fists. "Let's go home." For some reason, the coachman felt that the surrounding air seemed to have become a few degrees colder. It was already the 12th month of winter, so he couldn't help but sneeze several times. Rubbing his nose, he hurriedly got into the carriage and rushed back to the Qin estate. "Who's in the car?" Arbor asked curiously as he tugged at the prince's sleeve. "Irrelevant people." Imo Lien's gaze followed the carriage. After a moment, she retracted her gaze and lowered her head to look at Arbor. "No need to pay attention to them." Arbor didn't pursue the matter. After eating, the two planned to go out for a stroll. She had just given him 4 ebony storage talismans filled with winter fruits. Speaking of the 50 winter fruit trees, it was a bit funny. Chocho was like an idiot, insisting on accelerating their growth and harvesting the winter fruits. After picking a few rounds of fruits, she wondered if something had gone wrong with the trees. Chapter 677. Now that she was on the verge of death from Chocho's torment, she reckoned that she would have to recuperate properly for a while. However, Chocho had become increasingly spirited these past 2 days. Those unlucky winter fruit trees had been ruthlessly squeezed dry. A 12 cubic meter ebony blue storage talisman really couldn't store that many winter fruits. She had to store no less than 4 ebony talismans before she finally cleared out her overstock of winter fruits. The Crown Prince was also very astonished to obtain so many winter fruits to store, and he even hugged his Jojo and praised her. This time, Song Yuan of the Ministry of Revenue was going to be happy. Official Song, who originally came to him every day to complain about being poor, had already started repeatedly slandering him these past few days, instigating him to make an example of his father's harem and suggesting that the harem's expenses be reduced. This could also be considered a solution. Right now, the common people of the Mo Kingdom capital were almost unable to fill their stomachs, while the great king's harem were all exceedingly extravagant. If they could reduce their expenses, they would definitely be able to save a large amount of expenses. Miss Chow. Suddenly, a round-faced maidservant blocked their path with a flushed face. You, how can you turn a blind eye to our miss? As it turned out, after the two left, they didn't even glance at that Miss Wu in front of the palanquin and were just about to leave hand in hand. This time, they were blocked by that maidservant. Glancing to the side, they saw that Miss Wu was dressed in pink and white with a thin fur coat draped over her shoulders and a delicate hairpin inserted into her hair. Braving the cold wind, she stood next to the small palanquin, her small face slightly flushed from the wind, her eyes filled with faint grievance. Impudent! Hui Feng reprimanded, a mere maidservant actually dares to block the path of the Crown Prince and Crown Princess? Why don't you kneel in greeting after seeing His Highness? That maidservant quivered in fright and immediately knelt on the ground, her shoulders trembling as she said, "This servant has been impolite. Greetings to the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Seeing that you are loyal to your master, I won't bicker with you. Withdraw." Arbor coldly ordered. That maidservant hastily crawled 2 steps back and obediently knelt on the side, not daring to get up. Wu Xiaosu couldn't help but clench her cold fists tightly under her sleeves. With a stiff expression, Wu Xiaosu stepped forward and bowed to the Crown Prince. "Xiaosu greets your highness and Miss Chow." Prince Mo's slender eyebrows involuntarily furrowed as he coldly reprimanded her in a low voice, "Don't you know to call her the Crown Princess?" Wu Xiaosu's fingers under her sleeves were almost broken. She shrank back and knelt on the ground. She lowered her head and said respectfully, "Xiaosu thinks so." Miss Chow had yet to be married to His Highness. Such an overstep of her status to address Miss Chow in such a manner was likely to ruin her reputation. "Xiao Su has been taught by my mother since young, so I don't dare to lose my sense of propriety and ruin Miss' reputation." What a sharp tongue! The Crown Prince sneered. "Are you accusing this Crown Prince of lacking propriety? It's Xiao Su who is inarticulate and doesn't know how to speak properly. I've angered your highness. I hope your highness can forgive me." Wu Xiaosu knelt in front of Prince Mo and raised her pitiful face, aggrieved tears threatening to roll down her cheeks. "All right, it's just a form of address. Darling Chow really wasn't that particular." She tugged at the Crown Prince's hand and said, "Let's go. Are we still shopping or not? Why bother with her?" Only then did Prince Mo retract his gaze and pull on Arbor's small hand in displeasure. Just as he turned around, he heard Miss Wu call out, "Miss Chow, please wait." Chapter 678. A trace of impatience flitted across Arbor's brows. Was she very familiar with her? She came to visit her out of the blue and didn't even have an invitation. Where were the rules and etiquette she kept talking about? Was this the etiquette taught by her Wu family? Miss Chow, previously, because of me, Madame Chow and second Miss Chow suffered a bit of a fright. This is just a small token of my respect. Wu Xiaosu walked briskly to Arbor's side and suddenly took out a long box from her inner world, handing it over to Arbor. "What do you mean?" Arbor felt that this woman was very baffling. Wu Xiaosu nodded slightly at her and said with a smile that didn't show her teeth, "If I hadn't delayed your mother for a while at Dongshan Gate, perhaps they would have left long ago and wouldn't have encountered the black-clothed men's pursuit." "You're here to apologize to my mother?" Arbor asked coldly. Wu Xiaosu was startled and barely managed to quell the anger in her chest. She thought to herself that this Qiao family's eldest miss was too blunt in her speech. How was this an apology? She was just using an excuse to visit this eldest Miss Qiao and get closer to her in passing. Was this eldest Miss Qiao an idiot? How could she be so ignorant of the ways of the world? She couldn't even discern this kind of polite greeting. Who didn't know? Even if she, Wu Xiaosu, hadn't stopped Madame Qiao outside Dongshan Gate, the mother and daughter pair would still have met with danger, all right? How was this an apology? According to the rules, if she came to other families' young ladies to express goodwill, shouldn't they immediately let her in first? Since you're here to apologize to my mother, why must you insist on standing outside my door and insist on seeing me? You can go find my mother yourself. What a baffling woman. Wu Xiaosu was so angry that her hands, which were holding the long box, couldn't help but tremble slightly. If she could, she really wanted to give this stoic face a big slap. Can you freaking understand the ways of the world? Don't you want others to lose face by speaking like this to a guest who came to your door? The corner of Prince Mo's mouth twitched slightly. He glanced at Miss Wu and held back his laughter as he turned his face away. Arbor saw that Wu Xiaosu's lips were trembling and she was frozen in place without saying a word. He looked at her impatiently and said, "Is there anything else? If there's nothing important, then don't block the way. We still have things to do. Since you've already said so, what else can I do?" Wu Xiaosu clenched her fists tightly under her sleeves and moved to the side mechanically to make way for them. She watched as Arbor and the Crown Prince swaggered off. Her eyes seemed to be burning with fury. This was the result of her waiting from morning until afternoon. She hadn't even taken a step into the Qiao family's house. Good. This big Miss Qiao was truly formidable. Without meeting her, he would not have known that this person was actually such a ruthless character who was impervious to everything. At such a young age, he was very scheming. Wu Xiaosu thought that Arbor's entire person was a conspiracy. She believed that this big Miss Qiao deliberately gave her the cold shoulder in front of the Crown Prince all morning. Then, she ruthlessly brushed her aside in front of the Crown Prince and completely shut the door on her. Did she think that she would give up just like that? Her mind was filled with her aunt's earnest exhortations, "You must become good sisters with big Miss Qiao of the Marquis of Jiuyuan's estate." How could she have known that Miss Qiao was completely baffled by her? A total stranger suddenly came to seek an audience with an appearance of deep sisterly love. Didn't she find it funny? Chapter 679. Young Master. On the way, a ghost-like figure silently appeared in the carriage and bent down to salute. "Did you wipe it clean?" Omega Kotoku asked softly, her voice as cold as iron. "Yes." Omega Kotoku nodded, and her gaze shifted to that person's shoulder. A dark red spot was seeping through the black clothes. "You fought with someone?" "Yes." That person's mouth widened, and his eyes revealed a bloodthirsty intent. But the person who fought with this subordinate didn't end up well either. His injuries were more severe than mine. Haha, he probably won't make it past tonight. Omega Kotoku nodded slightly and then had the person leave the carriage. "Mu Xiaobao, you want to run away so irresponsibly after provoking this young master?" The teacup at Omega Kotoku's fingertips suddenly turned into powder. That was impossible. Arbor reached out to rub his slightly itchy nose. Mo Lien then grabbed his small hand and rubbed it. Cold? What cold? She was a mystic cultivator. How could she be cold in such a chilly winter day? It didn't matter even if she wore an unlined garment. But if she really wore an unlined garment outside, not to mention the Crown Prince, her parents would be the first to nag at her non-stop. It was sunny after the snow, and there were quite a lot of people on the streets today. The two people strolled aimlessly on the streets for a while, quietly enjoying the slow flow of time. However, the good times didn't last long. A whale broke the peace on the streets, and the pedestrians hastily dodged. The sound of shouting and whips, accompanied by a woman's cries and screams, quickly caused the streets to be in chaos. The crown prince lowered his head and took out a jade communication talisman from his sleeve. When he saw the small characters that appeared on it, his expression darkened. "Jojo, I need to return to the pavilion to take a look. I'll send you back first." "What's wrong?" "Aoye got a bit injured." Arbor suddenly raised a brow. "Aoye got injured? Can I go with you?" The crown prince was slightly startled. Then, he smiled and said, "It's even better if you go with me. How could I forget that not only is my Jojo an alchemist, his medical skills are even better. Can you let me know the location of the pavilion?" Arbor blinked. "What are you talking about? I don't have any secrets in front of you. Just ask me directly if you want to know anything. Besides, you're the mistress of the Hidden Night Pavilion. You can go anywhere." The crown prince squeezed her hand. "Let's go." Xiao Mu nodded. Just as the two of them were about to leave hand in hand, they saw a sobbing woman running toward them while hugging a child. Seeing that she was about to fall headfirst into Xiao Mu's body, the crown prince hastily caught his darling by the waist and dodged to avoid that impetuous woman. As a result, the woman, who was carrying a child, fell heavily to the ground with a thud. The child in her arms groaned a couple of times and burst into tears. "You bitch, you still dare to run." The man's angry curses were mixed with the sound of a whip slicing through the air, instantly landing on the woman's head. Smack! When the whip landed diagonally on the woman's back, the man's hand clearly stiffened, as if he didn't expect this whip to land so easily. The woman grimaced in pain as she hugged the child. She rolled towards the crown prince's feet. This miss, please be kind and help us mother and son." According to the routine, the rich miss would definitely sympathize with the mother and son's misfortune. Who would have expected that the little stoic, the eighth watch ended today? Chapter 680. Beat! Arbor ordered. Huifeng's mouth twitched, and he immediately reflexively slapped the man holding the whip. Paw! With a slap, the unlucky man holding the whip fell to the ground with a thud. "Thank you, miss, for saving me." Thank you. This commoner is." The woman holding the baby wept as she knelt in front of the crown prince and repeatedly thanked him. Continue. Xiao Mu was unable to move her limbs from being hugged by the crown prince, so she turned her head to say to Huifeng, "Hit." Both man and woman. The onlookers, who were originally watching the drama of a beauty saving the weak mother and child, were instantly thrown into disarray. What was going on with this eldest miss? Wasn't she saving someone? Why did she want to beat the injured woman as well? Why was the brain circuit of a rich family's daughter so different from that of a normal person? Arbor patted the crown prince's chest and had him put him down. He snatched the whip from the man's hand and threw it to Huifeng. Beat! 50 lashes each. Everyone. Even if the county magistrate was handling a case, he wouldn't give each person 50 lashes. Where did this monster come from? The crown prince couldn't help but facepalm. The scene was a bit tragic for a moment. The woman and man both screamed miserably on the street and rolled on the ground in pain under Huifeng's whips. They crawled and wailed, clutching their heads and trying to flee like rats. Xiao Mu didn't even bat an eyelid as she accepted the child that Xiaoyao carried over. She reached out to check his pulse, lifted up the child's eyelids to take a look, and then fished out a pill for him to consume. At the same time, he flicked his fingertips, and 2 talismans instantly turned into 2 streaks of light that pounced on the man and woman. Who sent you? Arbor coldly looked at the sobbing woman and curled his lips in mockery. Don't beat, miss, don't beat. The woman had only wailed 2 sentences in her sobbing state before her entire body quivered, and she answered Xiao Mu's question in full detail like beans from a bamboo tube. When the dictum talisman was activated, there was almost no need for any reaction time for it to take effect. It was a girl who gave us a liter of rice and asked us to put on this show. That girl said that Miss is kind-hearted. When you see me being chased and beaten by my husband, you will definitely save me. She also asked me to beg you to take me in. What does that girl look like? How old are you? Arbor asked coldly. The onlookers at the side were already dumbfounded. They didn't expect that this woman had teamed up with her husband to put on a show to deceive this rich young lady. She's pretty, just like a flower. She looks about 18 or 19 years old and is wearing a light pink fur coat. Her body looks a little frail, the woman replied honestly. Apart from rice, what else did I give you? Yes, yes, yes. The woman lowered her head and fished out a thumb-sized golden cicada from her waist pouch. She respectfully presented it to Arbor. Arbor swept a glance over and his expression changed slightly. He sneered, "What did she tell you? Tell me word by word." Yes, yes. The woman didn't hide anything and told Arbor everything that the girl told her. A trace of anger flitted across the crown prince's eyes. We'll go do our business first, Arbor said in a flash and handed the child in his arms to Xiao Yao. You send him home. Chapter 681. The onlookers who were watching the show were all confused and couldn't figure out what was going on. Xiao Yao couldn't help but be amused by their stupidity. She rested one hand on her waist and held the boy's hand with the other as she scolded, "Look at your foolish faces. Did you all think that our miss was randomly beating people up on the streets? This little boy was clearly abducted. Have you ever seen a mother use her own son as a cushion when she falls down? This child was fed a delirious poison, and it was our miss who gave him the antidote." Xiao Yao grumpily rebuked the passers-by. The onlookers were rendered speechless, and they all smiled sheepishly as they apologized profusely. Peony kicked the swindler couple and asked them where they had picked up the child. Only then did she take the boy and leave. The Crown Prince and Arbor prepared to return to the Hidden Night Pavilion first to check on Ao Ye's injuries. Keep an eye on the two of them. Just keep them half alive, the Crown Prince instructed with a cold expression before leaving. Hui Feng immediately bowed his head slightly. The two of them left through the northern city gate, and the Crown Prince immediately summoned Little Seven. The moment the child appeared, Arbor immediately discovered that he had grown up quite a bit. He now looked like a 14 or 15-year-old youth. A pair of golden red eyes swept over her, and he snorted. Arbor also snorted back at him. He wasn't even as adorable as her Qinghuan. Mo Lien was baffled. Why were these two little fellows like black-eyed chickens the moment they saw each other and didn't like each other? Little Seven. Mo Lien stroked Little Seven's little head. Let's go to Marshall Mountain. Seventh Yen pridefully turned his small face away and abruptly turned his head back to glare at Xiao Mu, who had cast her gaze over. Be nicer to little Mo. Yen Qi couldn't help but roar at Arbor. He didn't even know how his master got through all those years. He missed a person so pathetically, thought of a person, and longed for a person to appear. It was heartbreaking to see such a master. Xiao Mu trotted all the way to Yen Qi and suddenly reached out to smack his head. You rude fellow. Call me big sister. How am I not good to him? Why are you so annoying? Every time you see me, you either roll your eyes or roll your eyes. Xiao Mu pinched Seventh Yan's cheek forcefully with her small hand, turning his handsome face into a steamed bun. Seventh Yan was so angry that he was breathing through his nose. Mo Lien was busy separating the two little guys from each other. She kept comforting her baby, Jojo, be careful. You can't beat Little Seven. Little Seven, you're not allowed to do anything. Let go. Classmate Little Seven was about to die from anger. This damned woman was so fierce that she wanted to kill him. She came up and pinched his face. It hurts so much. Arbor smacked him on the head. Call me big sister. Damned woman. Thump. 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 Little Seven reached out to hold his head. He was so angry that he wanted to immediately transform into his beast form and send her flying into the sky. But when he met Little Mo's warning gaze, he was a little scared. The little dragon was so angry. Big sister, stop hitting me. This damned woman. There were 2 small bumps on his head. Wouldn't it have been fine if you had called me big sister earlier? Arbor finally let go of this proud little dragon in satisfaction. Fierce woman. He had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to be her little brother. Chapter 682. Seventh Swallow angrily transformed into his dragon form and carried the 2 of them toward Wulua Mountain. The Hidden Night Pavilion's capital branch was built deep within Wulua Mountain. It had a steep natural barrier, so not many people could come here. There were only small groups of adventurers who didn't go deep into Wulua Mountain. Most of them hunted in the periphery. Thus, the Hidden Night Pavilion had been stationed in Wulua Mountain for many years, so it was relatively peaceful. Arbor followed the Crown Prince to a mountain wall and watched as the Crown Prince pressed his palm against a stone block. A stone door opened in the originally barren mountain wall. The 2 of them walked in hand, and Seventh Swallow angrily followed behind them. The inside of the stone wall was very spacious. The ceiling hung high, and the wall lamps reflected light. It was a different world. Hidden Flower walked over and bowed to the 2 of them. Your Highness, Stay Up Late's injuries are quite serious. As he spoke, he brought the 2 of them to a small stone room. The moment Arbor walked in, he smelled a faint scent of blood. Stay Up Late was lying on a stone bed with his eyes closed and a thin blanket covering his body. Crown Princess, be careful. When Hidden Flower saw Chow Mu walk to Aoye's side and lift his blanket, he hastily called out in shock. Arbor's hands were like flowing clouds. He quickly lifted half of Stay Up Late's blanket. A pitch-black withered branch that looked like a ghost claw suddenly shot out of his chest and went straight for Arbor. Chow Mu harumphed coldly, and a jade-green tree branch abruptly shot out from her sleeve, ruthlessly lashing at those 5 ghost claws upon contact. Every time it struck, the ghost claw would twist a little, and the pitch-black withered branch would emit black smoke. Not long after, it was smashed into pieces by the emerald green branch, falling to the ground piece by piece. Chocho, what the hell is this? Arbor actually didn't know what had come out of Stay Up Late's chest. Thus, he communicated with it telepathically. Chocho said disdainfully, Master, this is an evil plant called the Ghost Claw Vine. It looks like a ghost claw and attacks very quickly. But, if he meets Chocho, isn't it a piece of cake? Arbor had long since gotten used to the smelly Chocho's style of praising himself every 3 sentences. Prince walked over and looked down at the wound on Stay Up Late's chest. Jojo, how are you? It's okay, I'll give him an injection. The ghost-clawed vine in his body has also been removed. He will recover. Hidden Flower heaved a sigh of relief. The Crown Prince crushed half of the vine on the ground. I didn't expect that the Qin estate was still hiding a demonic cultivator. I really underestimated them. Arbor took out his needle bag. His hands paused for a moment. Qin estate? Aoye was injured by someone from the Qin estate? That's right. The Crown Prince sneered and said, this time, we were 1 step behind. The people of the Qin estate were 1 step ahead of us in erasing all traces of their collusion with the Shantian prefecture. It's really disappointing that we couldn't convict them. Moreover, even Aoye was heavily injured by the Qin estate's people. In this confrontation, the Crown Prince had suffered a hidden loss. The Qin estate had only lost an insignificant batch of pills. Speaking of which, he had lost this round. The 2 people from the Qin estate were indeed very smart. They were really 2 difficult bones to chew. Arbor seriously finished giving Aoye the injection and fed him 2 healing pills. Send someone to take good care of him for the next 2 days. He needs to rest for about 7 days. Hidden Flower nodded and sent the 2 people out of the stone room, bidding them farewell respectfully. Chapter 683. Wu residence, eldest master, eldest madam, it's bad, it's bad. The manservant guarding the door frantically ran in and shouted, "The Supreme Court has come to arrest eldest Mississippi." What? The teacup in Master Wu's hand fell to the ground with a clang. He jumped up from his seat and angrily glared. What nonsense are you spouting? When did Xiaosu commit a crime to trouble the Supreme Court's people to come arrest her? As he spoke, two officers from the Supreme Court had already walked through the door and cupped their hands towards Master Wu. These lowly officers greet Sir Wu. Eldest Master Wu was precisely Princess Anam Wu Hongma's direct elder brother. This person had been ignorant and incompetent since young. If it weren't for relying on his brother-in-law, the vassal king of Anan, and desperately begging for an idle 7th-rank official position, he would probably still be a nobody right now. The Wu family was used to having smooth sailing days. Although the old master's official position wasn't high, with the vassal king of Anan as his brother-in-law, who dared to be disrespectful to the Wu family. This was the first time that the Supreme Court had sent people to challenge them. Apologies, Sir Wu. These lowly officers are under orders to arrest eldest Miss Wu. Please cooperate, sir. The two officers said with a fake smile. Impudent. Senior Madam Wu put on airs and angrily rebuked, "What right do you have to arrest her? Our family Xiaosu is a pure and innocent maiden, so how could she follow you to the Supreme Court? We have an arrest warrant. Someone brought out evidence to say that your family's eldest miss committed attempted swindling. With both the witness and material evidence, eldest miss can't deny it. Will Madam please not wantonly obstruct the Supreme Court from handling the case? Otherwise, you won't be able to explain yourself in front of the great king." Senior Madam Wu was so angry that she fell onto her stool. She looked at the two officers with reddened eyes before hastily turning to eldest Master Wu and calling out, "Master." Master Wu's lips also trembled, but he couldn't speak. Those two officers shook the arrest warrant in their hands and sneered, "If eldest master doesn't hand her over, then this lowly officer can't return to report on our mission. We can only go in and arrest her ourselves." A moment later, the pale-faced Wu Xiaosu was called to the main hall. Without saying a word, a servant came forward and put shackles on her wrists. Old Madam Wu screamed, "What are you doing? What did my daughter do? What right do you have to put her in chains?" "I'm sorry, Madam Wu. Young Miss Wu's attempted swindle was absolutely true. He was definitely going to jail. If you don't believe me, you can follow us to the Supreme Court." The Wu family's seal was carved into the corner of the rice bag. The servant impatiently pushed aside Senior Madam Wu who had pounced forward. "Eldest Miss is a mystic cultivator. In order to prevent her from escaping, I'm sorry, but I could only put on special shackles for mystic cultivators. Take him away." "Mother! Father!" Wu Xiaosu's face was filled with fear and panic as she was dragged out by the two servants without any trace of politeness. Old Madam Wu almost fainted on the ground. She hurriedly grabbed the maidservant's hand and said in a trembling voice, prepare the carriage immediately. Go to the vassal king of Anan's estate." At dusk, the news of Princess Anam and Wu Hongma bringing Senior Madam Wu into the palace to tearfully complain to Her Majesty the Queen, accusing the crown princess of abusing her power to bully others, had spread like wildfire in the palace. When the queen sent someone to the Qiao estate to invite the little girl had just returned to the estate for less than a quarter of an hour. When she heard the news, she didn't even lift her eyelids and only coldly instructed Xiao Yao, "Go call the steward over." Chapter 684. After Chang Zai hurried over, he greeted eldest miss with trepidation. Although this eldest miss was young, her aura was very frightening. Every time Chang Zai was in front of eldest miss, he didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In half a cup of tea's time, gather all the servants and maids in the entire estate. Arbor coldly said, "Bring me all the indenture contracts. Also, call the people from the broker house over." Chang Zai's heart thumped. How could he dare to hesitate? He quickly went to inform all the servants and sent someone to the broker house to invite people over. In the quiet courtyard, Arbor had someone bring a chair to sit in front of her. In front of her was a small table with a list of personnel. Chunying and Xiaoyun were the first to arrive. They ran all the way over, their foreheads covered in sweat. When they saw eldest miss sitting there and flipping through the list of personnel, they didn't dare to speak and just stood there obediently. Soon, half a cup of tea's time passed. Aside from Chunying and Xiaoyun, there was only the gardener Old Bai, the sweeping nanny Sun Yang, 2 maids from the outer courtyard, and 2 servants. The 8 people lined up in 2 rows and looked at each other in dismay. Arbor didn't say anything and ordered Xiao Yao to light an incense stick on the table. Her fingers lightly flipped through the list of personnel, occasionally raising her head to look at the people present. When the 2 incense sticks burned out, the last 2 servants who arrived late yawned and rushed over. Seeing many people standing in the courtyard, the 2 servants hurriedly squeezed behind the crowd. Compared to the other estates, the Qiao estate didn't have many servants. However, they also didn't have many masters. The eldest branch had a family of 5, while the second branch only had 2 people, so there were only 7 masters in total. Moreover, Qiao Mu wasn't home all year round. Speaking of which, 15 to 16 servants were enough to serve 6 masters. Father Qiao, Mother Qiao, and second uncle Qiao were easy to talk to. Usually, there wasn't much work at home. Just look at how undisciplined these people were. Arbor sneered. He had Chunying and the other 8 people stand to the side and coldly looked at the remaining 7 or 8 servants. Steward Chang, you didn't inform them to come see me in half a cup of tea's time? Arbor coldly asked. Understood, Chang Zai said in a trembling voice. You dared to do this even after being notified. That means you don't have any respect for your master. Arbor sneered again. 10 strokes each. We'll talk after that. Those 7 to 8 boy servants and maids immediately panicked, but several black-clothed youths abruptly jumped out from behind Xiao Mu to suppress them, and they brandished their cudgels without any room for protest. Among them, there was a boy servant that Xiao Mu recognized. He was precisely her younger brother Qiao Sen's lackey who was making the most noise and yelling the most viciously. After each of them hit 10 times without missing a beat, the black-clothed youths retreated behind Arbor in a well-trained manner. Arbor coldly glanced at the crowd. If you still dare to howl, I'll hit you 20 more times. In an instant, there was complete silence in the front courtyard. I've summoned all of you here today because I want all of you to honestly answer a question of mine. Arbor's eyes were unusually cold as he swept his gaze across the row of servants standing in front of him. A few days ago, someone sold information about my court to the eldest miss of the Wu family. They said that I was unreasonable, crafty, and cold by nature. They said that I didn't like people to serve me at close quarters. They even dismissed the people of Nanju Garden. As soon as Arbor finished speaking, the last 2 young servant girls who had blended into the crowd lowered their heads. They couldn't help but tremble all over. Chapter 685. I'll give you a chance to live. Whoever stands out now and confesses honestly, I'll let her go. Arbor said coldly, don't wait until I drag you out. At that time, even the Heavenly Emperor won't be able to save you. The last angry shout spread throughout the courtyard. Everyone felt their chests tighten and couldn't help but tremble. This group of servants usually had nothing to do. They ate her Qiao estate's things and used her Qiao estate's things, but in the end, they still betrayed her. She told Wu Xiaosu that there were no more servants in her Nanju garden. Wu Xiaosu was sure that she would meddle in other people's business and save that woman. She made that woman beg her in front of everyone and told her to definitely accept that shrew for the sake of her face. TSK, what a fantasy. She wanted to trick her. She would let them, these repulsive people, taste their own bitter fruits first. You won't speak? 7 to 8 dictum talismans floated in front of her. Arbor shouted coldly, I'll tell you, wait until I personally find out who betrayed me. Then you will have no way to live. Eldest miss, please spare us. Eldest miss, please spare us. The two servant girls who were hiding at the back of the crowd finally couldn't withstand the pressure and scrambled forward. They cried and kowtowed repeatedly. Chong Zai, who was at the side, broke out in a cold sweat. His legs were like noodles and his legs were trembling. These two audacious little girls really dared to provoke the lion in the sky. Arbor's eyes shot out a cold and sharp light. She hated betrayal the most in her life. Although these two servant girls' betrayal didn't cause her any real loss, this didn't mean that she would easily forgive them. She didn't fall into their trap because she was meticulous and saw through people. It could also be said that she had suffered in her previous life and accumulated experience. It wasn't because they were merciful. Originally, there was no grudge between them. However, for a small profit, Xiaochun threw away his bottom line as a person. Don't talk so much in the future. Let them eat it. Arbor threw out 2 pills, and the 2 black-clothed youths immediately understood. They took the pills and stepped forward, grabbed the 2 frightened and trembling servant girls, and forced them to swallow the pills. The 2 of them became mutes on the spot, unable to speak. 2 pairs of frightened eyes, with a trace of resentment, stared at Arbor. You're not convinced? Then I've changed my mind. Arbor looked coldly at the 2 girls who were glaring at him with hatred. Kill them. The 2 maidservants' pupils suddenly shrank. They opened their mouths but found that they couldn't make a sound. In the next second, 2 cold lights flashed past their necks, and a red liquid sprayed out. Everyone felt as if their hearts were being gripped tightly by something, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. In the future, if anyone dares to reveal any of the trivial matters of my Nanju garden to unrelated people, they will be punished. That's the outcome. If you can't control your mouth, then don't ask for another mouth in the future. Chunying. Chunying knelt on the ground with a plop, and said with fear and trepidation, Eldest Mississippi. This servant will scrupulously abide by her duties and won't dare to blabber nonsense. Arbor shook his head, looked at her, and said, From now on, I'll give you the right to manage the household. Xiaoyun, you'll replace Chunying and serve my mother. The 8 of you, starting from this month, your monthly allowance will be doubled. Arbor's words stunned the 8 maidservants who had arrived first. As for the rest of you. Arbor looked coldly at the servants who had arrived late. Putting on airs to the heavens, putting on airs even more than your masters. My Chao estate can't afford to support you. Sell them all. Chapter 686. When the servants heard this, they felt as if the sky was about to collapse. They had been eating and living well in the Chao estate for the past 2 years, and they were used to living a good life. Now that the Chao estate had been promoted to a marquis estate, their lives were even more prosperous. Compared to the children of other poor families, they were all as comfortable as young masters and misses. Now, eldest miss actually wanted to drive them out with just one sentence. This time, everyone panicked, and they only hated that they had offended eldest miss, this ancestor. This ancestor wasn't as easy to talk to as the other members of the Chao family. She would poison them to mute them, kill them to kill them. Her swift and decisive methods were completely unlike the other people in the Chao estate who were soft and docile. The servants all cried and begged for mercy. But how could Arbor care about them? She had given them a chance, but unfortunately, only half of them grasped it. Since that was the case, she didn't need to be polite with them. It's so noisy, so annoying. Drive them all out. Arbor threw the name list on the table and beckoned to Chunying. Chunying hurriedly ran over and respectfully bowed to pick up the name list on the table. Cross out the names of the people who were driven out today. Also, check if there are enough people in the estate to clean. If there aren't enough, pick 2 or 3 honest people from the broker house. It doesn't matter if they are men or women, as long as they are willing to work hard. Yes, Mississippi Chunying was someone who could read. These 2 years, she had always been by Madam's side, helping to manage the household, so she naturally had some skills as a housekeeper. Arbor nodded. It will be the new year in 10 days. Tomorrow, Go find a few people from the clothing workshop and buy 2 sets of winter clothes for the new year for each of the servants and boys. Calculate how much cloth is needed and report to me when the time comes. There is no harm in having more, but don't shortchange anyone. Chunying's mouth was slightly agape. Even the servants and manservants beside her were looking at their little mistress in a daze. Their master, who was still furious just now, was now softly talking about giving them more clothes for their monthly allowance, so that they could happily celebrate the new year. Yes, Mississippi, Chunying curtsied, her face beaming with joy as she agreed. Xiao Yao pursed her lips and smiled. Actually, her young miss was the easiest to get along with. As long as everyone did their jobs well and didn't cause trouble, her young miss wouldn't care what they did for the rest of their time. Standing to the side, Chang Zai, whose legs were still trembling, suddenly knelt down with a thud and weakly called out, "Eldest Mississippi." At this time, Arbor's anger had already dissipated by half. When he turned to look at Chang Zai, his expression was a little better. "You didn't manage your family well, and there were many incidents in your family. Do you know your crime? Eldest young miss, this old servant knows his wrongs. I beg eldest young miss not to chase this old servant out." Chang Zai trembled as he spoke. The gardener, Old Bai, who was on good terms with Chang Zai, also fell to his knees. He kowtowed and stammered, "Young miss, I can't double the monthly allowance. I beg young miss, don't kick big brother Chang out." They were all ordinary people, and Chang Zai was already over 50 years old. If he was kicked out, he definitely wouldn't be able to find work. When the time came, there really wouldn't be any way to make a living. Sun Yang and the two of them were the first to enter the residence, so their friendship was naturally different. When she heard this, she also quickly knelt down and pleaded with Arbor. Xiao Mu looked at them expressionlessly, causing the trio's hearts to beat like a drum, feeling very uneasy. Chapter 687. Chang Zai was deeply afraid of implicating the two old fellows and hurriedly cried, "Eldest miss, please don't be angry at Old Bai and Sun Yang. This matter has nothing to do with them. I'll just leave." After saying this, he turned to leave with a hunched back. Arbor coldly called out, "Stop right there." Chang Zai's steps froze. Arbor glanced at the three. "So you two are willing to give up double your monthly allowance for Chang Zai?" Yes, eldest miss, we are willing." The two nodded in unison without hesitation. "You are also willing to leave the Chao estate on your own? Will you bear a grudge against me?" Arbor raised her brows and looked at Chang Zai. Chang Zai hurriedly turned around and fell to his knees again. "This old servant does not dare. All these years, this old servant has received the Chao estate's grace and has been taken care of by master and madam. Even if I leave the estate, I do not dare to betray my masters. Rise." Arbor speechlessly looked at the three of them. "When did I say that I wanted to drive you out of the estate?" Chang Zai, Old Bai, and Sun Yang were all startled and carefully thought back. That's right, when Miss had been angry just now, she had not said a single word about driving Chang Zai out. At most, she had ignored Steward Chang. "I removed you from your position as the steward only because I felt that you weren't too suited for the position of steward." Xiao Mu sighed as she explained, "Although you are indecisive in handling matters, you are a loyal and righteous person. You have followed my parents for so many years. Even if you have not performed meritorious deeds, you have still worked hard. How could I drive you out? Could it be that in your eyes, your miss, am so unreasonable?" Chang Zai hurriedly said that he did not dare. Old Bai and Sun Yang were not good with words and could only follow Chang Zai's lead and say that they did not dare. "All right, all of you rise." Arbor moved her fingers and took out 2 small pouches. Xiao Yao pursed her lips and smiled. She knowingly took 2 small bags and walked over to Old Bai and Sun Yang. She handed them to them. "Here, this is a gift from Mississippi. Take it and calm your nerves." The two of them got up from the ground in a daze, each of them stupidly hugged a small bag and peeked inside. There were 2 pieces of ham inside. These days, meat was much more expensive than rice. This was a bountiful reward. Old Bai and Sun Yang both stared blankly at their little master. Chang Zai, you have 2 very good friends. At this time, Chang Zai already knew that the young miss would not chase him out of the house, and his nerves were no longer as tense. Hearing this, he smiled from the bottom of his heart and nodded repeatedly. From now on, you can work at my parents' Li Jing garden. Arbor said faintly, you're getting old. You can just ask me to do some trivial things. Many thanks to Mississippi. Chang Zai secretly wiped his old tears, his heart feeling more and more guilty. He didn't manage to cure the house, but the young miss did not blame him and even allowed him to stay. In the future, when he took care of the master in Madame's small courtyard, he could not be so careless. He absolutely could not fail to live up to the young miss's trust in him. Arbor nodded and let them leave first. Chunying also took the remaining 2 servants and 2 manservants to leave, looking for the trafficker to choose servants. Soon, a black-clothed youth flashed to Arbor's side and whispered a few words to her. Arbor slightly raised an eyebrow, a cold light flashing through her eyes. Wait for me to go out and take a look. Master, the green mammy by the queen's side has been waiting for a long time. Arbor's footsteps paused, and she nodded to the youth. Go call her over. Chapter 688. Arbor waved his hand to dismiss the other hidden guards before leading a hidden guard named Lightning to the door. Lightning and Huifeng, who served the crown prince, both came from the hidden guard camp, which was a bit different from the nature of the hidden night pavilion's work. Arbor finally understood everything now. Those with the word hidden in their names, such as Hidden Flower and Hidden Current, were all members of the hidden pavilion and specialized in assassinations. However, when those idiots were idle, they liked to visit the night pavilion to cause trouble. As for those with the word Yi in their names, such as Charming Night and Midnight Supper, they were all members of the night pavilion. Their main job was to travel to various large cities and towns to gather intelligence. Sometimes, they might even have to travel to faraway countries to gather all kinds of intelligence. The hidden guards from the hidden guard camp were usually the crown prince's bodyguards. Of course, when the hidden night pavilion was very busy, the hidden guards might have to lend a hand or something. The crown prince's hidden night pavilion's hidden guard camp had been established for who knew how many years. Its scale was already very large, so it was quite easy for Arbor to use it directly. Especially the hidden guard camp. It was said that the great king's father, the old Grand King, had directly passed it down to the crown prince when he was still alive. There were also some extraordinary people that Arbor had never seen before. Arbor had just arrived at the door with Lightning when he saw the manservant hugging his younger brother and refusing to let go. The manservant was wailing loudly, as if he wanted to vent all of his grievances. The slave trader stood to the side and watched awkwardly. Apart from the manservant who seemed to be on steroids and refused to leave Qiao Sen's side no matter how hard he tried, the other maids and manservants all shrank behind the slave trader listlessly, not daring to resist at all. Arbor raised his hand and pointed. Lightning's figure flashed, and he reached out to pick up the wailing manservant. Arbor waved at his younger brother. You're back. Sister. Qiao Sen was baffled by his manservant's crying as soon as he returned from the academy. When he saw Arbor standing at the door, he hastily ran over and pulled on his sister's hand, asking, Sister, what happened? Why is Adong crying like this? Arbor didn't hide it from him. He told his brother everything and then asked, Do you want to keep this kind of servant who bullies his master? The manservant hurriedly crawled to kneel in front of Qiao Sen and cried out, Young master, you can't abandon this servant. Qiao Sen's little face flushed red. He went up and kicked the manservant. How dare you be so disrespectful to my sister? He deserved to be sold. This young master doesn't have a wicked servant like you. Leave immediately. Let me tell you, even Big Brother Crown Prince has to listen to my sister. Of course. I am no exception. Even this young master had been ruthlessly beaten by my elder sister, let alone a manservant like you. You really have no discernment. You actually foolishly went against the wind and committed a crime. You're the biggest joke in the world, trying to challenge my elder sister. How capable do you think you are? Our dear Xiao Sen was someone who knew when to yield and when not to yield. He had long discovered that his elder sister was the one in charge of the entire family. Even someone as powerful as his big brother had to listen to his elder sister. What kind of thing does a manservant like you think you are? How dare you climb all over his elder sister? You deserve to be scolded. Our dear Xiao Sen hurriedly drew a clear line between himself and the manservant, indicating that he wasn't on the same side as him. He pulled his sister towards the door.